Boy.
the aim.
Okay.
I just got done with
Some of it is just, there's just a little bit of art to it. So I think that's the figuring that out. It's like
4 weeks of radiation.
those ones though, the one I sent you a couple of old staff reports I wrote in Idaho Springs too.
Rubber dye.
And one of them is like
What's the art in the
Yeah.
You have to mute yourself. And turn off your sound.
it should be.
Is that a video too? Just
Yeah, I think so.
I've done about every survey in the town.
Yeah.
Hey Jennifer, can you hear us?
Yeah. And many others.
Yeah.
Yes, I can. Okay, awesome.
Perfect.
I have to clarify, what was your name again?
I'm Lee Sedell.
Please sit down.
I'm the Boulder
I
County
know.
surveyor.
I recognize the face, but
You probably
Is it
surveyed
the-
his what property?
Well,
It's, something's going on.
Back in 2000 or the
Yeah.
late 90s when they were trying to add water lines up to Alpine.
No,
I think this new setup.
Trying to get
I just think they said it was-
in the park.
It's kind of cool because then you get everybody.
There's that survey.
Yeah.
And let's see what it's gonna cost
You
you.
can get a big TV. I bet you can get one.
Yeah.
It's this cheap.
Very important.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right.
Janie?
Janie's on?
I am, yes.
That's good. That means she can hear you.
Okay,
Done
can
something
you
right.
hear us, Janie? Hear us okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. For those of you in the room, this is the work session that is gonna go between now and 7:50, where we'll have a short break to be able to reconfigure, get these tables out of here and get some chairs put over here in the audience, where we will be talking about the downtown overlay district. This is something that Ron brought up as he'd like to have further in-depth discussion on, and so we, at the last meeting, decided that this was gonna be best for residents and for people, interested parties to be able to join in and have more opportunity to tell us what they are looking for. So with that, I will turn it over to whoever is on showing them. Or how you want to start it, who's presenting.
That's a good point. Let me pull that up. So, yeah,
I can really quick read the purpose.
absolutely.
The purpose is to provide the planning commission with a structured checklist and of decisions related, oh, I need my stronger glasses. Yeah, related to catalytic project number 2, the downtown 2025 sub-area plan, First Street Overlay District plus CBD design standards update. The staff will use the commission's input, plus other people in this room, to draft an ordinance language and design the standards for the future review. And then there's a checklist that goes along with that we will be following to just make sure that we hit all the high points. I'm gonna ask that we try to keep it focused a little bit and not talk about, as we want to hear everybody's opinion, but if we get derailed for 15 or 20 minutes talking about one issue, we're not going to get through everything we need to. So if I tell you we need to move on, I would ask that you respect that and let us get on to the next issue, because this will not be the last time we talk about this.
No, and we can just put that we didn't get to a consensus for, something along that lines. But yeah, he pretty much went over it. I think we really just need to, the feedback we got from you guys last meeting was to really just kind of create this checklist of what the sub-area plan was recommending, and we have Cheney on to kind of, if you need some more background or have specific questions in regards to this. So I don't know how you
I
guys.
would love if she could give us whatever spiel that she had, that she was going to talk to us about a little bit, maybe about how what went into coming up with these recommendations for the sub area plan. And I'm pretty familiar with it, but maybe not everybody in this room is.
Sure, I can do that. So this is Cheney Bostic with Studio Seed. We worked on the downtown sub-area plan the last couple years. I think the best way to go through this is to, I'm trying to pull up something here, and I'll share my screen, is to go through the summary of the public engagement that we did as part of the downtown sub-area plan. So I'm going to share my screen and let me know if you all can see this now.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll try to keep this within like 5 minutes, but I'll go through the highlights of how this happened. So these are the dates back in 2024, March of 2024, we had a virtual and an in-person workshop followed up by an online survey that sort of matched that. And overall, we had around 300 participants. I'm going to skip over the boundary discussion, the bridge discussion, getting to how the recommendations for the overlay came about is we specifically talked a lot about First Street because it was a topic of discussion at the time, still is. And so we looked at different configurations of the street itself and how the buildings relate to that. And option 2, which was to widen sidewalks, was the most common choice. And so that is where the going from a 0-foot setback, you only have a 50-foot right of way, which is tiny. And so we were recommending a 10-foot front setback to give more space to the public sidewalks. We asked about the future of it becoming a festival space, so a flexible street. People really like that idea. Here's just a rundown of, we asked what are the most important elements to include in the future design of First Street. So wider sidewalks, you can see were number 1. Again, reinforcing the reason why we wanted to include a front setback. We looked at different massing configurations and everything from keep it the way it is, option 1, require the setback, option 3, require the setback and a step back on the 3rd floor, or option 4, vary the 3rd floor. And so over here is showing, you can see the option 3 and 4. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but I'm kind of circling 3 and 4 were the obvious winners, which said to us that people are comfortable with 3 stories on First Street, but they need to be set back or varied. And so that helped us with the recommendations there. There were mixed feelings about existing buildings on First Street. And then we did this very detailed visual preference survey is what we call it. We asked, we had a series of images and we asked people to rank on a scale of 1 star to 5 star being the best, how that exact image, how they felt about the height, the architectural style and the materials, and then the overall size and scale. And so these are the top vote getters. This one from Telluride, I believe this one's from Frisco, but you can see that the scale, these are 2-story buildings. They have natural materials, vertical windows, storefronts. So we took cues from, the higher vote getters to also kind of back into our recommendations. And so I'll just flip through these, 3, 4, all the way to, more boxy, simple buildings were lower on the rating scale. And the ones that were the lowest were these larger, multi-story, clearly, mountain denser developments that people did not think fit the character. And so that's kind of the gist of what we talked to people about. Again, it was over 300, which is a pretty good number for the size of Nederland. And so we felt comfortable moving into recommendations, which is what we're going over tonight. And so that's kind of how it all came about.
Okay, thank you very much for that summary. Are you going to be able to hang on as we kind of talk down through these and have discussion?
Yep.
We might have a question for you. Okay, so I'd like to kind of, I don't know who, if you all were able to get the work, at least I'm sure the planning commission members were, the work session checklist. But what I'd like to do is just kind of go down them and try and address each of them and get through as much discussion on what I would consider the most pertinent items before we start talking about other issues. So the first thing that we were talking.
Would you like it shared up there? Would that make it helpful for the people who don't?
That would
Okay,
be fantastic. You could put that up there. So
absolutely.
you don't have it.
Sorry.
I thought there was a way to do it full screen, but I can't figure out how to do it on my computer either. So. Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
So what I read there was the purpose, and we're just wanting to kind of go down and discuss the checklist, each item, and get feedback and hear what folks have to say here about it. So the first one was, should the overlay district apply only to First Street? And our discussion, or should it extend to portions of Second Street as suggested in the plan? And then what we talked about at the last meeting, there was some what's the word? I guess some people that thought maybe it ought to, some input that maybe it ought to cross the highway and include the gas station, maybe tin shed and some other things. But this is the time for us to have discussion, why or why not we should have it just be on First Street, just Second Street, or look to expand it. I would say we'll go back to, I'm gonna lean most heavily on the recommendations from the plan, and because as Cheney said, this was from a pretty large swath of, there was all told over 300 engagements for input on this. And so that's a pretty good, amount of engagement for our small town, for how many people get involved. So, my instinct is to stay with what the plan recommended based on the input from the public that came to those open houses. And I thought it was well put together, plus maybe Cheney's experience in dealing with this from before, but I'm open to any other discussions on that and I know it's probably going to be impossible for you to have the checklist up there and show us a boundary picture too. Do you think you could get a picture of that?
Yeah.
Well, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I have, it's a blur effect, but I thought because I certainly brought up the whole idea about the entire central business district, and somehow I was thinking that we had actually agreed upon that. And now, when I read and kind of thought about it more, I feel like, yeah, maybe that's not appropriate. But I thought that we actually at one time almost discussed the entire, all the way up to Jackson as being.
That was one person's input, yes.
Well, I thought we'd actually agreed on it, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, so now we're here to decide.
To discuss.
Yeah, to discuss.
So-
And to give good input, right, but
Hold on.
okay, so then I just finished that. To do First Street, and I think that, Steve's input, which you read later on in the meeting was, yeah, I don't know how you don't do Snyder and Second Street. That's part of that.
That's true.
And that's, and I'm not gonna push her all the way to Jackson, because they're established, but certainly if you're gonna do First Street, how do you not do at least the south side of Second Street? Not both sides. And we have an opportunity
Slowly
with a
loading.
vacant lot and site to include that also, so I would say Second Street and Snyder should be added to it.
Just for reference for those who might be looking online or in the room, the yellow outline is the recommended area for the overlay district by the sub area. And the discussion was the smaller box there, not the one that kind of looks like it goes all the way to the flex zone.
Yeah, page 26 shows it a little bit better. It has a purple box around it, if you can get to page 26, but if not, that's okay.
Do you guys want to ask Cheney her thoughts on that too, since?
Please, yes, please jump in anytime, Cheney.
Okay, yeah, I didn't want to.
What-
So- Yeah, so just to talk a little bit about the history of the boundary, it was, so we looked at the last updated downtown design standards and guidelines, which was last updated in 2012. And so we looked at, these as being either a complete rewrite of that and scratch it, or update that document, because a lot of it is still valid, but some of it needs updated. It does not have a boundary map in that document. So it was hard to tell, but it describes the CBD as from Jackson to Snyder and Second to First. And so clearly we need a boundary, because that could be taken either way. And then the maroon colors are, because it also references the CBD a lot. It is called the CBD Design Standards and Guidelines. So if you're not looking at a map, you might think that it includes all of these properties, you know, up here as well, because they are CBD zoned in the maroon color. So I think there's that. It could either be all of the CBD properties, which is one thing. And in that case, the zoning would match the new, you know, design standards and guidelines, or it is this overlay, right? Where it doesn't apply to every single CBD property, but it applies to the yellow boundary area.
Okay,
Does that make
Um,
sense?
it does. So I guess maybe I didn't quite hear it in the explanation. What was it that made you kind of focus on what we're looking at right now, that the,
Yeah. So
as
because sorry. So the reason that we recommended the overlay was because there was imminent pressure on First Street. Everyone wanted something, you know, the standards to be updated to reflect the community's vision and value along First Street, because that was the imminent development pressure.
Okay. Well, now's the time. You have some input, Ron. We're here to listen.
Oh, okay, you're asking me to speak?
Please, yes, this is a free.
I have a couple of comments on hers.
Okay,
First is, she mentioned the 10-foot setback. Let's talk about the south.
I'm sorry, can we talk about this and we'll come back to the,
In terms of, that's what it was.
Boundaries first.
Yeah, the boundaries.
and then we'll get to the setbacks. The setbacks are later on the list, I'm sorry.
I'm fine with the boundaries as they are.
Okay,
I like the larger area because then it doesn't look like you're just targeting me.
fair enough.
I think the boundaries can go, I wrote the legal description for the Downtown Development Authority, so I'm very familiar with it. Downtown area in yellow is fine. I think if it includes the historical society property, as long as it includes the historical property, which is the east of the Igati property, because that's the logical place to put a second bridge. Right? And I'd comment that the right of way for First Street is not 50 feet. It's 57 feet mostly, and we made it 2 feet larger at UC Brewers, made it 59 feet. But the problem is that south side of the road, south side of First Street, are up to 14 feet into the road right of way.
So if you give them a 10-foot setback from where the property line where they are right now, they'll never rebuild because the back of their building and some of the back of their property is in the floodplain. So you would force them with a 10-foot setback, you would force them to build a building that they could only build half the size of what they have now. So they'll never develop those if you make a 10-foot setback on the south side of First Street.
So the south side of First Street has been a problem right since the start, because the buildings like the co-op, I did the survey on the co-op. My understanding it was built in 1890, right? And it's built into the road right of way. And then the building next to it is built into the road right of way. Right? And so there was discussions with fire boards and the town staff about giving some sort of license to that. And I wrote legal descriptions for licenses. I actually wrote them with little descriptions and little diagrams showing what we were trying to grant a license for.
So some kind of a grandfathering.
Some kind of a license to have the building where it's been since 1890.
Okay,
In the street.
In the street, right? And my response to the board when they were asking that, the people that were in charge at that time, was I thought that was stupid. Just deed it to them. It's been there since 1890 or since 1920 or whenever the buildings were built, right? So deed them those pieces because that's where it is, instead of messing around with a license.
Yeah.
You know, the city of Boulder does a lot of licensing with even awnings into the right of way. And it's a real hassle. These buildings have been here forever, right? And if you try to push them down the hill, like he's saying, you're gonna end up with them in the flood zone. You're not gonna be able to rebuild. And the road itself, if you start to push those buildings to the south, right? What are you gonna do? You're gonna have to fill in that whole area with a bunch of fill. Right? In order for them to rebuild and have something that's at the
You can't
grade.
put fill in the flood.
I think the question though, that we're talking about is the boundary issue. And so I think one thing, we're always have encroachment agreements. That's not gonna stop. We're not talking about moving the buildings. We're talking about where should the boundary for CBD be? And I think that that's really the critical question for this.
What's the overlay?
Right, so if the overlay boundary includes stuff south of First Street, then if those buildings get destroyed somehow and the overlay says they have to be 10 feet from the line, you might be painting yourself.
I'm just saying, that's a thing that's getting to be discussed further down the checklist. So that's one of the things that I think is relevant for setbacks.
So I think to bring it back in, it sure seems to me if they're encroaching from the south and you want a street of a certain width, then the boundary should probably be pushed out to Second Street because part of the solution is over there.
Right.
Yeah, I think,
And then I also think that if you want to if we're gonna do something substantial downtown, we might want to look at underground parking, in which case Second Street is going to be part of the solution.
Jeannie, could you just briefly talk about what your thoughts about Second Street are and like how the treatment of it would be?
And what, say that last sentence again?
You think your thoughts about just Second Street, like what we would do with Second Street in terms of the overall district? It would be the same standards. It would be first and second, basically, that would be covered.
Yes, yeah. I mean, everything within the yellow boundary is would be included in the overlay standards. So the south side of Second Street.
So then the only concern is that if you're creating a standard that buildings violate from the inception of the standard.
Well, I think the question is that there
Happens
needs,
all the time.
there's the overlay district itself, and then there's the land use standards that are being discussed further in the checklist. And as I'm saying is, if this is the district, then we can continue to talk about the zoning standards. They're not the same question, I think.
So let me ask, I've heard a couple of people say, I'm fine with the boundary as it's drawn. We talked last month, Roger had pointed out that, so if you look up there, where Tin Shed is, where there are also the brown maroonish buildings there was, and then Lee was talking about extending that over, just basically right there where your cursor is, all the way straight down. Is that what you were saying, Lee, so that it included where the likely bridge would have to go?
Yeah, I think that where it shows it seems fine. If all we're discussing is that,
Yes, right now.
then, that seems fine. It's the blocks that matter.
Okay.
So include the east and the west sides of Snyder Street all the way to the creek.
I think you go all the way to the east side of Schneider, right? And the north side of Second. And go all the way to the creek.
Yeah, so from the creek to the highway, really.
Yeah, I mean, the creek to the highway would be fine, but.
With the bridge.
Which it pretty much is right there, but how you're using your cursor right there to extend that just by a couple of properties. Cheney or whoever's doing that, I think is what we're talking about now, is whether or not we wanted to push that out since there's already a business there. Or if there was, oh man, that's fantastic. Whatever you're doing right there, thank you.
Yeah.
And so what can we do we want to try and get to some consensus on the boundary and then move on to the next issue. If there is an ability to get to consensus. I've heard most people say that boundary looks pretty good. I think that looks fine to me. Is there anybody else that has heartache or problems?
But that drawing doesn't show where the bridge to the that.
What is the what is the reason that the bridge would need to be in the overlay
Yeah,
district?
I
Because we
would-
don't own
I would-
property
I
there.
would be curious.
There's no current bridge.
You suggested that, right?
Yes.
Is there a reason why? Because it is zoned currently high density residential.
Yeah, I just, as long as it's zoned that way and doesn't get changed, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it not including it, but,
I wanted to ask also, are there not additional businesses further east on Second Street? And then how are we making the decision of like arbitrary cutoff point?
Well, there are, but it's right in the heart of other residential houses. So essentially, if you're talking about Perry Shoe Shop and some of those other things, then you're starting to include residential houses on either
Okay.
side of him. And what we're basically trying to look at is, we're going with what was recommended based on all the engagements from the sub-area plan and from the SE group. And what we're talking about now is if we want to make an adjustment to include just those other two businesses, Schneider's Garage, that could be developed under the overlay district. And
Yeah, I
the-
see. And those have more of a commercial distinction in terms of the neighborhood and the whole area versus the ones that are mixed in more residentially.
Yes. You got it.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
And it would be that it's kind of an experiment and there's lots of pros and cons. We don't even know where the property lines are. So maybe a small step in this direction is not a bad thing.
As in, we could always come back and amend it at a later time.
Well, we can always, hey, this is great, let's do more. So we have one line, how far west are we going to go on the southwest? Or are we gonna go all the way? I got it. So,
Point to me and show me where
we're
you're
going
well,
to Jack.
going. No, point here, so I can't see where you're going.
well, here,
Okay.
so right now, the red line goes to here. Are we gonna include all this then too? That,
Yes, I think she just didn't draw it.
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Now we
There it
have,
is.
now we have a boundary.
Is this something that we can come to consensus on as the boundaries for the overlay district? If so, we can move on to the second item.
Go for a nod, at least.
Yes.
You can,
So I can put that in my notes.
yeah, can we get a nod
Yep.
of everybody here? Anybody have heartache? I'm nodding.
Anybody not
Okay.
nod?
Now's the time if you have heartache.
Okay.
All right, great. Next issue. The next thing on the overlay district boundary, and then we can move on to yard and bulk regulations, is should the PUD within, I'm sorry, should
PUDs, you got it.
Delegate, Jim.
Should PUDs within the overlay district be required to comply with the overlay standards? So essentially, that if we had somebody come forward with a PUD later, that would be within, it would be what we have come up with as overlay district standards. Is this something, which I think is kind of the point, is this something that people have issues with or feedback? And I would encourage at any time, Cheney, that you have something to add, just cut me off and jump right in.
I have to ask a question. Isn't that the whole point of having an overlay district?
That's what I thought.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not like missing something within the question here. The whole point of an overlay is that it would comply with those standards, correct?
I think the idea was that we couldn't then have a PUD that can come in and say, we're not worrying about those standards. We're asking you to give us 55-foot height or, change the setback standards or whatever it was that is agreed upon. And we're deciding whether or not these are the standards we want to hold to that we're talking about tonight, once the ordinance gets passed.
Gotcha. If the overlay has 55-foot roofs, then that makes sense. But if it does not, then I would say, it has to comply with the overlay.
I just threw that number out. I did not, I'm not suggesting.
I say 100. It doesn't matter the number. Doesn't matter the number, but it's supposed to comply with the
But
overlay.
these are architectural setbacks, so and there's a whole lot more in a PUD than just those things. So I would say that what we would decide on the overlay should be incorporated as guidelines for the PUDs in that area. But that doesn't stop you from not having the PUD where you go through that process of public comment, because it's PUD to me is more of a, as much as a use of what's going there and is allowed under our standards. And as we update chapter 16, then we should actually further, incorporate what we've done. But I mean, I would suggest that, incorporating what we get from this into the PUD process for that area, if there ever is PUD in that area.
Janie, you're just saying you shouldn't be able to. The base zoning shouldn't change in a PUD essentially. I mean, you could add the other conditions, but we're just trying to keep the base zoning from the overlay.
So maybe that's what it said, maybe that says just exactly so. It's not saying that there should be a PUD, it's saying that it should, that the PUD should require these standard, maybe, we have to read it the correct way.
Can we clarify what the questioner is asking?
The question was, and Janie, I might need to just clarify what you're thinking, but in the Catalyst project, it says that PUD should be required to align to that sub-area plan zoning.
Apply, yeah.
And so the yard and bulk standards of these other standards that would be created, PUDs would not be able to opt out of those standards or change the base standards, is the intention, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, so I agree, in a roundabout way, I answered my own question. Or you did.
Great.
I think that that is the point, but I hesitate to, before we have a plan, to paint ourselves into a corner. Like, for example, let's say that we want to update utilities. And it takes 25 feet of frontage along First Street in order to update those utilities, because there's cars in First Street that we can't put utilities underground then. So now you've taken away 25 feet or 15 feet of frontage in order to put new utilities in First Street. And you're locked in with this overlay. You can't make a deal with the private landowners, whether it's him or anybody else, to change that because it's in the overlay.
Why not plan that from the beginning?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that maybe we need to talk about infrastructure first and figure out exactly what we need along First Street for infrastructure and exactly what we need along Second Street for infrastructure.
Totally. And I think
Right.
that's part of the discussions later,
Right.
but it's the question is, should this PUDs abide by overlay district requirements?
And see, that's where I have a problem, because let's say that the infrastructure has to go further north now, and now we have to abide by the PUD structure. We've kind of painted ourselves
What
into a
would be
corner.
the overlay standards? That was,
So the overlay standard says that you have to have a building that's a certain distance from the line, or you have to have a certain height.
But the beauty
And
of
now-
a town is that you could, if something happens, you can write an
It's a
ordinance.
minimum and you could amend,
That's the
ask for a
point.
variance. I mean,
So I just don't like to paint us into a corner before we really know what we're trying
But it
to
seems you have,
build.
like you have
infrastructure.
options once you're in there. Like I don't know that we're painted. If the town has the ability to amend something or.
So we're gonna pass something and then amend it.
I prefer not. I'm more into, we're passing this. These would be what PUD things do comply with.
Right, so,
We should-
so I think it should start the other way. We should figure out where the utilities are gonna go and what we need, and then enter into discussions with the landowners about what they're willing to give, and then come to a solution that's fair for everybody, the landowner, the town, everybody, instead of making rules that we're gonna break down the line.
Well, or we
I
design
don't
it
know
from the
that we need to,
beginning.
though, yeah.
Let's say you say, 25 feet. Let's say we go ahead and design it and design the overlay district with that. Now we're giving a blueprint for whoever landowner that's fair, and that any landowner can say, okay, I know the standards and let's move forward. Because it doesn't matter if Ron owns it or anyone else.
That's right.
You've
So
got
do
to
we
create a
know what we
blueprint.
need?
What's that?
Do we know what we need for utilities along? First
Janie, you
Street?
did some modeling. Did you look at utilities too, or is that something we?
no, but I believe the city had some preliminary, maybe it was just costs. I don't know if they looked at space, but I mean,
Runs-
they're typically in the right of way, and utilities fit in small streets too.
We can put it more.
Go ahead, Lon, let's hear your thoughts on this, please.
I proposed, you've seen it, I had was 25-foot setback just because of these properties on the other side of the street being in the street. In that setback, I would like to have a parking garage underneath it, so the parking garage would go right up to the property line, and then utilities would actually be inside the building. This is done around the country and around the world. Go to New York City, there's vaults all over the city. Almost every building in New York City has a vault right under the street. And they used to have deliveries into the sidewalk where they had an elevator came up out of the sidewalk and then went back down and the sidewalk was covered up again. To have underground parking, you need to use the entire corner to corner property because you have so many supports and so many pillars. And you have to design the parking before you design any buildings, because if the parking, and that's just what happened to the St. Julian in Boulder. They designed a beautiful hotel, but it wouldn't fit on the parking. Once they designed the parking, you had to throw out all their $1 million worth of architectural work and start over and design the parking first. So I feel if you don't have a PUD where a lot of these things, I'm going off subject, but I'm saying I'm not for taking away a PUD when there's all kinds of details that could benefit the town tremendously. That could be just summed aside with a very restrictive, you're gonna do this and nothing else. And my guess is you probably get nothing else at all.
Okay. Thanks for that input. So I got it down here. You're recommending a 25-foot setback. We'll have that, when we get to that portion of the discussion.
Well, again, you now have a setback that recommends third story setback with 10-foot setback. I mean, building that stair step back from a 10-foot setback.
Yeah.
If you have a 25-foot overall setback, does that violate the rule if it goes straight up? I mean, and then the other thing, this development, and we're talking about one guy, one development, and I just think that you can't jam a round peg into a square hole. And if you don't have some way to be able to look at the overall picture and work out details from the overall picture, you're going the opposite way. You're trying to shove the peg into a square hole. And if you don't have the PUD options to actually work together, cooperate together, come to a solution on design, I don't think you're gonna get anything.
The compromise then maybe is just to scratch 3 for right now.
So we can continue making this progress. Okay.
No, I don't, I just wonder, because
So to be determined.
many examples.
Please.
Can I ask another? Sorry, go ahead.
What Nicole was about to.
Well, I was just wondering if there's like a sentiment of going around for the planning commission members of, do you feel like the overlay district would have to inform and regulate the PUD? I'm just curious as to.
I personally would ask, what's the harm? I mean, if it's still something that the commission would have the ability to review and approve, then why not allow for the PUD, option that would, provide for further discussion? I mean, I just want to ask the question, then what is the harm? We're worried about non-compliance overall, or we're worried that people will request variances that make this ineffective overall? Or, I mean, I just want to have that discussion so that I can better hear the reason why we're going to be that restrictive and not allow for potential negotiation with regard to the compliance down the line.
I can answer, and maybe Shana, we could kind of tag team it a little bit, but I think the point of an overlay district is that you guys have approved a sub-area plan as a body that's informed by engagement. This is one of the recommendations, because I think if you create base zoning, and the base zoning of the overlay district can be, you can look at that. That's why there's this full checklist in front of you. But the point of creating an overlay district is to create certainty in the zoning. And that's what's needed. That's why there's design standards and kind of land use standards, because I think your job that you're tasked with is what is the most appropriate land use for the town of Netherland. And that's why this conversation is happening. But if you allow PUDs to allow people out of base zoning, I don't know why they're ever not going to do that. The other thing with PUDs is they can be used appropriately and they can also create spot zoning in some situations, which is not ideal. Like you don't want to have your zoning map just be PUDs everywhere. You want to have some consistency in these character areas. I think also it's one thing to remember is the reason we have design standards in the downtown CBD district is because it was intended to preserve the original 1916 town plat. Like that was the whole point, is Old Town and that business district. Now within that, I think you have some flexibility. I don't think you're not locked into anything. You're the body that gets to create the standard. And I think that there's multiple things here. I think you don't want to create a situation where development is too hard, but honestly, utilities belong in the town right away. We're talking about like 10-inch pipes and we have the technology to put them in our own right away. So I don't know that we need them in other people's right away. I think that the key here is that we need to create something that makes it possible for property owners to do what they need to do and to like use their property effectively. But at the same time, there's a balance there with the town. And I think that that's the question before you is, do you want to create a zoning standard for downtown that has design standards that create predictable outcomes in development, or do you want to do something different? And it doesn't have to be even just like a black and white thing. It can be in the middle. And Roger kind of said, and I think I agree, like this can change over time. We have the ability, if you found out like the board of trustees for sure has the ability to write an ordinance anytime they want to. And that's what we're doing right now is you guys are participating in that process as planning commission does. But Cheney, I don't know if you have anything to add to that about just the reason why for PUDs.
That was very well said. I agree with everything you just said. I don't need to repeat anything.
The other thing I would add is the 2012 design standards were never codified.
Right.
And so there is always been this opportunity of, well, I kind of follow them, or maybe I don't actually have to, right? And I think what this does is it helps codify and put those design standards into something that there is consistency across, because that was never done.
Well, and I think what we're trying to do, and I respect what you're saying, Lee, but we can't anticipate everything that's gonna come up. I know you're saying this is likely an issue, but we're trying to get something put in place. And then I don't hear anybody saying that doesn't make a PUD based on new information, something that can't come forward, and we can consider the new information at the time. But we're trying to get to like an 80% solution, now, and get something in place.
As long as it can be modified, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
And more than likely, it won't kind of happen. We're talking utilities, but the bigger statement is that, that the PUD does not say, okay, we don't have to do this stuff because it's a PUD. So, yeah, the actual utilities, but all the other architectural setback things are, would be standards. And we're talking, that one section of town, which, so, yeah, I guess 3's back on. I certainly I was trying to just say a compromise way, but I felt that, once we figured out that it's not stopping us from having a PUD, it's adding to the process.
With us looking at that zoning as the standard that, we want to try to adhere to, unless we come up with some untenable thing that we have to look at.
Right, and I would like to see utilities in the street too. But I don't know that it's possible in First Street with all the cars that are underneath it.
Let's rip those cars out.
And I mean, you rip them all out.
Yep, let's do it.
Well, that's.
Okay, sorry. That's long, that's.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't even know that that's a true story.
Right, but.
Let's cross that bridge. when we get
Right.
there.
No pun intended.
But I think like what we're trying to attain is like, do we want consistency across this area? Do we want the look and feel of a downtown, right? Like our Netherland downtown, that's special just and specific to Netherland. I think that's what we're trying to attain here.
Let's do that, so we
I
can.
was gonna say, so in my notes, I put overlay standards be incorporated into the PUD standards. That's how Roger kind of phrased it. Is that,
I think the sentence right there is good enough.
yeah, so, but do we have an agreement with that?
Let's have a show of hands if you are in favor of the PUD standards being as closely as possible following these and in light of, again, some extraordinary situation that caused us to offer variance.
I like that. The statement of number 3 is what I would say, yes.
With the understanding that if something comes up, it can be modified, yes.
Yeah.
I would just caveat you guys, just to make sure you remember, and I know you all know this, but a variance is an extraordinary remedy and it's not something that you bring upon yourself. You can't get a variance for something you created yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's something we need to remember in that process. So variance is probably not exactly the right thing. But what I would suggest is if you did have a project come before you where there was something that was complicated, there could be a modification based on what the best interest of everyone is at that time. And I think that that's really what you're saying anyway. So,
Via an ordinance to be
Yeah.
specific.
right.
Ron, please go ahead.
I could be in favor of your design standards as long as they don't impinge on the productive square footage that's needed to create a successful development.
Yeah.
And if there's a way to do that in terms of height, design and that sort of thing, I'm fine. I understand what the design desires are, but it's the productivity that's gonna make the determination whether or not it ever gets done. And if you limit or diminish the protective square footage or cubic footage for that matter, then you've taken away potential to get what you want.
Well, it's a good thing you brought that up because we're just about to talk to that under yard and bulk regulations next. So we're gonna bring that up right next. And I have a feeling you're gonna talk to this a little bit more. So I'm gonna take that as a win and we're gonna say yes on the first 3 for the overlay district boundary. Yard and bulk standards, the very first one that we want to talk about is whether or not we want to go with, again, these are all recommended within the plan based on 18 months worth of public engagement. Recommend lot coverage of 80% instead of the current 100% coverage that is there. And I think this is where you were just talking about the square footage.
Is this surface level, or underground? And what, that's,
Let's let Cheney weigh in on this one.
Please do. Cheney, can you tell us a little bit, expand a little bit on why the 80% maximum lot coverage was recommended?
Yeah, that was from looking and at the existing conditions around downtown. Let me share my screen again. So we did some GIS mapping, but it's pretty rough. So we did look at some of the developments like Kathmandu, that do have parking around it. The newer developments, the Tin Shed. You can just see that they aren't 100%. Even this 2-story on the corner. We did do some modeling and looked at some GIS maps. And so it was deduced from kind of looking at the existing conditions of Nederland and trying to replicate that in new development. That 100%, that is a very urban downtown, right? Where you build from lot line to lot line and buildings touch each other. And that's what you might see, in a more urban setting, which Nederland is not. So.
Okay, that was a really good description. Thank you for that. Ron, your feedback on that?
Even before we go in, what does 80% versus 100% mean? Does that mean that you can locate any 80% of the lot?
That's what I
But
thought,
you
but
can build up, does that mean you can build in the front right to the edge?
well, we're gonna talk about that. We're just talking about lot coverage right now. We're gonna talk about setbacks in a minute.
Okay.
So the only concern I have with that is that, let's say that the town, so currently the downtown block has a 5-foot jog in Second Street. And
What do you mean?
there's a jog of land from Old Bruce's addition. So you go down Second Street, by all the houses there,
2/3 of the way to.
2/3 of the way, and then it jogs 5 feet.
So like,
And then,
yeah,
right, and then
Yeah.
it goes to the east, and then it goes south about 32 feet, and then it jogs over 2.5 feet, and then it goes down, and then it goes around. So again, I think it would be great if the town and the landowner sat down and decided what was needed for infrastructure. And maybe get rid of the 5-foot jog and maybe get rid of the 2.5-foot jog And like you say, put the utilities in a town right of way. So if we decided that we need 15 feet for a town right of way along First Street, then what happens to the 80%? Does the 80% now on a smaller lot? Is the landowner penalized? Like, I don't think we've had the discussion as to exactly what we need to do our utilities. I mean, my understanding is that the utilities for First Street go under to Second Street. That's my understanding. Utilities don't go down First Street. The buildings on First Street, the utilities go under the parking lots to Second Street, right?
Both sides.
I'm not sure about the south side, but the north side, all those buildings, the old PI, the one next to it, all of the Crystal Shop, all those utilities go to the north. So
Not to the alley.
not,
To Second Street.
no, to Second Street.
They're
So,
just stub out, so.
if the town came up with a plan for utilities and then they worked with whoever the landowner is, whether it's Ron or 8 people, right? And you pushed back, you need 15 feet or 25 feet along First Street in order to get those utilities in, because you don't want to rip out all the cars, because that's going to cost $1 million, right? Right?
The problem is though, those are the utilities for those businesses. They're not town utilities. Those are just the private property utilities. So when a new development comes in, no matter what the scale of that development is, they're gonna have to reconnect to our system the way we say, and they're gonna have to fix that up. Like, that's a responsibility of the property owner to attach those utilities how we say they need to be done. So I think in the end of the day, the lot coverage issue, the utilities are really not the critical issue for the lot coverage. I think the issue is, and maybe Ron, you might speak to this, and you kind of just were, is like your productivity numbers that you think about in those spaces, and maybe that's a more relevant piece here, just because the utilities themselves, that's gonna be a whole different conversation that we're gonna control through engineering no matter what.
Sure, my only issue is it gonna be the whole, so in other words, we have a certain square footage right now for the downtown block. Right?
It's 80% of square.
Is it 80% of that square footage, or
It's the lot,
does that one lot,
but
right?
that's not one lot,
Right, it's a bunch of different lots.
right?
So, but let's say that the town worked with whoever, I mean, we had a PUD in front of the town. I mean, I got comments back from the town lawyer like 5 different times about a PUD for the downtown block.
I think it doesn't matter if it's a big lot or a little lot. The question is, should it be 80% coverage on a buildable lot?
Okay, and then if there's alleys, the way that I've seen some of the plans that were in the library that Ron brought forward, there were alleys
Yeah,
that were
there is-
for buildings. Would those,
Catalyst plan number 2 does suggest different standards if there's an alley, or I think it's an alley or a corner, Cheney, but I'm not positive.
so I'm curious about that stuff.
And the sidewalks, they're obviously,
That was in the original 80.
Well, let me ask a question. Some smart person knows more than me, maybe can answer. When we talk about setbacks, that's part of the percentage, so, or is it not? So if we say that there's a 10-foot setback, that counts towards some of the percentage of not lot coverage, right?
That's my understanding.
Right,
Yes.
so you're already.
Percent coverage, it's 0 setback.
Jim, it's the CBD, the new proposed overlay, minimum rear yard setback is 15 feet or 5 feet if there's an existing or new alley present. Minimum rear setback accessory uses is 10 or 5 feet existing or new alley present.
In
So
this case, the block has no rear setback. If
yeah, but you have 2 frontages then, so you'd have to treat Second Street and First Street frontage, I think.
Sorry, I can't.
You'd have to treat First Street and Second Street as a frontage.
Right, on
And so-
both sides of the
on
block,
both
so you'd have a setback on each
I
block.
understand.
But that would count towards your 20% of not covering the lot.
Yeah.
And so I think what you said, Lee, and what you keep talking about, I'm gonna tell you, we don't have the time when we're dealing with this issue to start working with the individual line orders for these bigger issues you're talking about. But what you just said, working with, we have these utilities, the 5-foot jog and all that, those are exactly the kind of things I feel like a PUD would address when you came forward. We're still looking at the base standard, but now you come forward and you say, hey, I'm looking at the boundaries here. This jog's over here, this is over here. Now, can we work with the town and figure this out? And I think that's what we're saying. that we would use a PUD if
Sure.
it made sense for. So it's
So my,
not like it keeps it from happening.
right, I get it, but what I'm saying is that 80% of the current lot that's there, let's say that somehow it passes the board as one lot. Is it 8% of the lot that we
Yes,
submitted?
of a lot.
Okay,
Yes.
of that one lot.
Yes,
Okay, and let's say that the board decides that because Schneider Street right now is only 28 feet wide. Between, where Schneider's garage was and where the acoustic coffee house, where
or history chicken.
yeah, it's 28 feet wide there. So if the town decided, and it gets wider as it goes north, it jogs over 12 feet on the east side of Schneider Street.
Okay.
So let's say we decide that we need to take another 15 feet for Snyder Street. Right?
Particularly for footbridge.
It's particularly if we get further down the line and a bridge goes over Concord. Would the 80% be from the original? Or would it be from after we've taken that extra 15 feet or 12 feet or whatever it is?
It's the lot, like whatever the legal lot is.
So if the town board decides to shave off pieces, then it would be 80% of what's left.
I don't,
Not 80% of what's currently owned.
yeah, I don't know that that would happen though. I think there might be fire concerns. I mean, fire is gonna talk about anything that happens over there and they need to make sure their apparatus can get there. So there's always those things, but that would be a taking is what you're describing. And that would be a condemnation process, which would be totally separate. So I think
Or
that that's
it would be a giving process in a PUD. It would be
Possibly.
an agreement.
possibly, but even that, I'm not sure that that would be the right. But we'd have to figure out what the right structure for that is. But I think at that time, I think what Jim's trying to say is that if there was a consideration like that, that would be maybe a part of that development process overall, and then we'd be looking at that. But I think ultimately, what the point is what should the maximum building envelope for a lot be? And that is a pretty common standard that we have across our zoning and a common land use question in every community. And I think what Cheney was saying is our downtown is not a Victorian downtown that has like no setbacks and maximum coverage. And even like those buildings don't have maximum coverage usually and lots like that. Like you see that in Central City, you see that in Idaho Springs, you see that in Leadville. They don't have full coverage either, even though they do have those Queen Anne Victorian style buildings and those traditional main streets. And I think our downtown is going to be, it's a little bit more of an eclectic thing. And so I think that's part of this equation is how do you build that scale, that walkable Netherlands scale and keep the lot coverage, I think. And that's what I was asking Ron about your productivity numbers and what your thoughts are in that space. I don't know if you can hear me okay. I'm asking if you could talk about lot coverage based on what your thoughts are for what you need to build to be productive for you.
I would say that whatever's done, if the coverage, I'm not at all displeased with 80%. I think that's fine, as long as that 80% persists in the event property is condemned for a use for the town. And that still counts as 80% of the lot coverage. Because that addresses square footage, cubic footage productivity.
I see what you're saying.
I actually agree with because that has in terms of an agreement, you're gonna have to widen. It only makes sense.
Have to
Widen Snyder Street, because if you have there's only 13 feet of space for a car to get through. Right now, if there's cars parked on both sides of Snyder, and all of a sudden now there's angle parking in front of Tin Shed. With no ordinance, nothing, but it's the most convenient and it allows the most number of cars to park there. And I don't have a problem with that either. I just prefer, of course, that they backed in, but that's not.
These church
Sorry,
business,
wait,
Ron.
30 seconds.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and what it sounds like is another win to me. Because I'm here to tell you that there's no one here that is looking to try and punish you or to try and take parts of property and then say, now you've got to comply with a small. I mean, I think we're a reasonable body and the town is reasonable. And if some situation like what you described happened, we would say, okay, let's figure out in this PUD how we can make this work and work with the landowner. I hear exactly what you're saying, that somehow you're gonna be left out in the cold and now you're gonna have much smaller envelope to build on.
That's right.
And
That's exactly
just
right.
one person's opinion, I agree with what you're saying, that we should try to work with you. If for some reason there was a time where we had to come and take part of your property for utilities or roadway expansion or something like that. I feel like that's
You don't
what
have
we
to
would,
take it. I'm willing to give it to you as long as I
Yeah.
get something in return.
All right.
okay, so that to me sounds like a PUD process kind of issue, where this is more the entire district, not just one property based on a specific situation.
Is it zero now?
Yes, or it's 100%.
100%?
Yeah, CBD is 100%.
So the only other, yeah, not to prolong it, but the only other issue is that certainly, because I remember that very strongly, the decision about the setbacks and the have 10, the reason why it's zero is because you have 10 feet, then firemen can't fight that fire. So I mean, you know that, so do we even have that? That'll just stay in.
We're gonna talk about that next.
That'll stay in the code, I guess.
That's the next thing.
I just, like, in a nutshell,
Not really.
don't want to see the design standards conflict with the productivity of the yard and bulk requirements.
The other thing I would mention is because Cheney pointed out that we already have many properties that sort of comport with that 80% rule. If we pass anything outside of that, then it automatically puts those out of compliance. So we have to balance that as well. Just like what you were saying earlier is, from day one, if you put them in an illegal status or, out of compliance, that's a problem. So it's the same thing here. Many of those properties downtown are already at 80% because of parking.
Okay, other feedback, and maybe we can go on to setbacks.
That's-
That's
But now we.
Okay, are we in agreement
We're
with?
creating the other ones to be out.
Okay, all right, let's keep going. We're getting short on time. So are we in agreement that 80% setback lot coverage, 80%
Lot
lot coverage is something that we could put in?
I'm gonna say surface coverage.
Okay, Ron has a caveat on that.
I mean, really.
Yes,
think
that's
about
what we're talking
parking,
about, surface.
Giant posts you gotta
But we're
have,
not minors.
ramps.
Right.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that? Is if it's 80% from a surface level,
Almost.
or sorry, yeah, 80% on a surface level, street level, surface level. Why would you have to have 100% underneath?
Because of the structure that you need to develop to put these things on top. You have drainage issues, you have structural issues, you have posts you gotta drive around. And so you're gonna have close to 80% of the underground utilized by structure that won't allow for parking. Walls and elevators and fire escapes and
But then how, but if you go to 100%, you're saying that there are no, where there's no examples of where you would have the parking structure as basically the foundation for all the structures on top.
That's exactly what you have to do.
Yeah, that's exactly, okay, so,
You
But-
can't design what's above it, tell you to design what's below it.
The one
Totally makes
thing with that though is they can't mess up our infrastructure either. It has to be, we have to build an engineering agreement when that happens and have that all figured out so that we can still take care of our stuff. So our infrastructure there can't be a,
Right,
An
and if
encroachment
that's
there.
allowable in the PUD, then I
yeah,
think
but we
get
would cover it through engineering.
both of us.
So what I'm sensing a pattern here. You want to drill down on the details that you think are going to impact your project. And we're talking about larger things and saying that when we comes to the time to bring your project forward, we can look at these things and we're saying we're in good faith. If there's something that just doesn't make sense, we're willing to work with you on it, within reason and what makes sense. I don't think anybody's here trying to make your project untenable, so that it doesn't work.
Let me give you an example of why I'm concerned.
Okay.
For years, we had a parking ordinance that nobody could comply with, not one business except me. Because I tore down buildings and the buildings that were left could utilize that parking. There's 155 spaces on my property with now, under that old ordinance, allow only 13 parking spaces for use for anybody else. If all my buildings complied with it, you had to have so many spaces for every table. You had to have so many spaces for every employee. You had to have so many spaces, for the square footage. By the time you added that up, it was an excessive amount and it didn't work. So the board abandoned it. Actually, it's still in abeyance. It hasn't been abandoned yet. It's still
Not enforced.
it's not enforced.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm concerned,
Okay.
because if I had gone to redevelop like that, there wouldn't have been any parking for the guys across the street on the south side. And they would be at a distinct disadvantage. My personal philosophy is that everybody in the downtown area has to benefit from whatever you do as zoning, or it's not gonna work. And that's not just me, that's everybody in the area. And if there is some manner of parking, paid for or not, city paid or not, those businesses will suffer dramatically. And they did. 4 years ago, I took all the parking off in a snowstorm in January, and there was the greatest howl and cry, and I did it because of the parking ordinance. To demonstrate that you needed the park. So that's why I'm concerned.
You were
Is that
mad.
that didn't work. It was passed and it was in force for 25 years until the boards and everybody else. So that's why I'm concerned. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Well, I think what you're saying is not exactly right, because
That's
there's a
not
whole
what-
story of the
All right,
park.
okay. We gotta keep going. We got
And
15 more things
Most
to talk about.
downtowns are
And
getting
all
rid
the
of
boards
parking-
gave you
parking
variances. If they had stayed with the law, it would have happened.
I'm sorry.
If they would have stayed with the law, it would have happened, but it was variance after variance of projects being okayed and not requiring parking is why we're in a pinch 30 years later.
All right, brother, we gotta
Move
keep moving.
forward, please.
All right. So we're talking about, I'm gonna read through the rest of these yard and bulk because I have a feeling, we have,
40 minutes, and
40
we may
minutes.
not have Cheney for more than one meeting. I don't know yet.
so what the yard and bulk requirements are is we're trying to talk about whether or not we agree with the maximum lot coverage of 80%. We said yes. Front setbacks of 10 feet instead of 0. Rear yard setbacks of 15 feet or 5 feet, if there is an alley. Maximum building height, 35-foot flat roof or a 43-foot pitched roof. Maximum stories 3, required 20-foot setback for the 3rd floor on First Street, and eliminate parking requirements for ground floor commercial. So these are the areas we're trying to talk about, all under yard and bulk. And if we could even get through this in the next 40 minutes, I'd be happy.
Start with Cheney.
Cheney, please add any input that you have for this. If you have any.
Okay, I mean, I think you could start the discussion. Like I said, all of this came from the, the public engagement that we did and trying to look at patterns that exist in the downtown and replicate them so that the character remains similar with new development and it fits in with Netherlands' existing character. So I think front setback, we talked about yeah, I mean, 35 feet, so 35 feet is your maximum height across every single zone district in Netherlands. And so realizing that downtowns do have, tend to have taller buildings. We talked through that with the community and some separate groups and having the 35 at the flat roof, keeping that the same, but then allowing it to go a little bit higher for a pitched roof. And so that's the 43. But keep a maximum story of 3 was based on the precedent images and the things that we talked to the community about. So yeah, I'll just answer questions if you have them.
Right. Wants to go for it.
We lost your chair. Should we go? Everybody agree on front yard setbacks?
Of 10 feet.
I agree with that. I'm mostly in favor with everything that is recommended in the plan.
10 feet seems fine. I can say that as a person who's been surveying in Boulder County for 42 years, the city of Boulder on their alleys have 0 or 3 feet as their setback from alleys. 0 to 3, so I don't know why we're talking 5,
And or 15.
right?
Everyone's its own place is why I think
But it's in Boulder County.
it's still its own place with its
But-
own land use control.
Sure, but if there's alleys that are gonna be there already, if alleys are designed into any PUD, and the stuff that I've seen at the library has 2 alleys for deliveries, because that's one of our problems, right? Are you gonna make them go 5 feet beyond the edge of the alley?
Wait, that's considered an alley and not a road?
It's an alley, yeah.
Maybe Cheney can come up, answer why that 5, we came up with that 5 feet
Yeah.
for alleys.
May I just make sure?
So because the existing alleys are, if they do exist, they are tiny. They're not, fire would require much more than that anyway. So typically, I mean, I work in Denver a lot. They require, a lot of their historic alleys are 15 feet. And they will require 20 feet now when redevelopment happens, and then they still have a setback. So I mean, I agree. I've worked on lots and lots of zoning codes. I've seen 0-foot setbacks on alleys. We can have that discussion, but the alleys that exist are very below standard. So it's just about providing additional space for cars to move through and deliveries and fire.
Make it more safe and accessible, a better, yes, go ahead, Lynn.
If you say you're gonna have a 10-foot setback, everything's right on the line. If you have some sort of ability, and this is where Wood First Street is now, the buildings jut in and out a little bit, which gives you relief and a lot less monotony than one straight line. The worst town I've seen like this is Peonia, Colorado. Go down to Peonia and take a look at the downtown, just about the size of Netherlands. It's flat across. Why don't you have some sort of within type or an average where the average setback, as long as you do something like this to give a little bit of variety. I hate straight flat facades, but that's just me. But I think this gives somebody a little bit more flexibility within your design code than just saying you're gonna have a flat, straight wall.
But well, doesn't that allow the builder, if we say it's 10 foot back and you want to build back another 4 feet to change that, it doesn't have to be a straight line.
You can, but you lose productive space.
I understand, but we're trying to figure out.
But
They're not gonna do it.
But 10 feet's not gonna give you your 20% anyway, so you're gonna have to carve off some more space.
And that's you're gonna get. Nobody will do this if they have to put the setback into their property.
Well, and the other thing,
Show me where it's happened. It hasn't.
But
I'm
How is the
wondering,
setback going into their property at that point? It's a straight line.
and they already have an 80%, guideline. The 10 feet is part of that.
right. I don't think that's gonna be a problem, but I am concerned about, let's say we decide, I don't know that there is an alley in the downtown block. There's no platted alley there that I know of.
If Ron
They just vacated one.
wanted to build one. I mean,
No,
you could
no,
do that
but
on
there was a vacated alley in north of that, across, North Boulder Creek, where North Beaver Creek is. But there's no platted alley in the downtown block that I'm aware of. Those are all meets and bounds parcels. There's no alley.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I mean, if you wanted to build an alley, I think that's what they're talking about here.
In the rendering of his packet.
Right,
There's
It
two
shows an alley going
There's
right
an
down the
alley.
middle.
right, so.
That's why it is.
Right, so now you're saying if he builds a 15-foot alley, he has to stay 5 feet either side, so it needs to be 25 feet wide? Building to building, that's what you're saying?
How wide would the alley be that he would build? It would depend on that.
Well, it's gotta be a certain.
So it's got to be a certain.
Because of trucks and.
Most alleys I've seen from doing this in Boulder are 15 to 20 feet wide, right?
Mhm.
So in Boulder, it's a 15-foot alley, it's either a 0 or a 3-foot setback from that alley. It's a 15-foot alley, right? So if it's a 20-foot alley, there's already 20 feet there.
Right.
Why do you have to add another 5 feet or another 15 feet?
Well, it doesn't exist at this point, the alley.
Right, and there's no alley going through the block where the tungsten, where the tungsten village is either, there's no alley built there.
No,
And there's no alley built where Kathmandu is either. There's no alley there either.
the only alley would be down by Saltos.
Yeah.
And that alley jogs 2.5 feet because the Snyder's garage was surveyed wrong way back in the day.
Right.
So, yeah, I just wonder about the 5 foot
Is
or
it
15 foot
15 feet
setback
access
from an
there?
alley.
Well, this is gonna be a fire question, if there is access behind it, I mean, you guys could take the alley piece off. And just know that we're going to go with Net Fire's requirement for whatever that is. And we will, I mean, that'll be engineering and Net Fire. And we'll be going, it's building code, fire code, and
So currently an alley shall be 20 feet wide unless platted otherwise. So that's what it says currently.
So now the buildings are gonna be 30 feet apart if you adopt this code, right? You're saying 5 feet on the rear?
well,
5 feet on either side of the alley or 15 foot for the rear,
Right,
rear
so
back.
is it 5 feet on the other side of the alley? So now you've got a 20-foot alley plus 10 feet. That's a 30-foot alley.
no, it's not a 30-foot alley, it's a clear air zone of 30 feet.
A clear Arizona. So
Clear
you're
zone.
taking away more square footage from whatever developer.
But wouldn't that also then count towards your 80% of that we're trying to, for that
Yeah.
lot
Be
coverage?
parking
Sure,
there too.
I'm just bringing that up.
It's a good point, but the 10-foot setback won't add up to 20%, so it's gonna have to be more,
And that's only if
more
they
carved out.
decide to build an
Alley
alley.
there.
Right,
It
right.
never existed.
Right, that's where I feel like we're getting bogged down on.
Right, but I'm
Right.
just curious.
Okay.
That's just an option.
Okay, well, let's get to the big enchilada here. Maximum building height, Ron. Maximum building height of 35 feet for a flat roof or 43 foot with a pitched roof that requires a 20-foot setback over the third floor from first. Let's hear what your input is on that.
All right. If you have a building with a roof like this, you have much more pressure on the sides when you get snow on it. So the roof structure with what's called a 5-on-12 pitch is probably the best. But if your roof is like this, then it's gotta be stronger because you've got more pressure on the building. And with 43 feet, you're gonna have lots of very little slope on the roofs. They look better, they function better, and it's structurally better to have a minimum of a 5-on-12. 7-on-12 is a little too much. That looks like a Switzerland. I don't think Meadow needs that. So where arbitrarily 43 feet came from, I don't know. And then there's two other things that are involved. Is that when roofs were that flat, they didn't require sprinkling systems. And most retail needs a 14-foot ceiling. Look at the ceiling here. Why is this room so big? Why does it have such a high ceiling? Well, I imagine there was basketball or something here at one time. It's next door now. But the psychological need of retail is 14 feet. Then you gotta put a sprinkling system in. Then you gotta put plenums and ducts and things like that. Lots of things that weren't around in the days that those heights were there. And the only reason I could find there was a 35-foot height limit is that the fire trucks couldn't get higher than that. They didn't have ladders. So 2 feet makes a difference.
What are you asking
Because
for?
each level, 45 feet,
45,
because each level has got to be a little bit higher than it used to be because of all the infrastructure that's got to go in it. And that particularly sprinkling systems, and they need to be open so that you can maintain them because they always leak. They're almost as bad as flat roofs, not quite, but pipes deteriorate and they need maintenance. And if you put them and you don't have room for them, then people break them, they hit them and all kinds of things like that. So they have to be up where they're relatively safe and to where you get good coverage. The lower the sprinkler head, the worse the coverage.
What's your ask?
I'm sorry,
What are you asking for?
I'm asking for 45 feet.
Okay, Cheney, can you give us any, do you have, if you don't, the answer could be no. If you, do you have anything to add on the roof height, recommendation of 43 feet with the pitched roof? 35 is what already our standard is in Netherlands for the flat roof.
Yeah, I believe, we were just adding like 8 feet for a standard, I mean, trying not to get too tall. We did some sun studies, and looked at that, but I mean, 2 feet is 2 feet. You're at 35 feet now. This is, I think, up for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
I like turrets.
Are you saying
Turrets would be-
35, 40?
Really trying to get through this.
I understand, but I want to know is it 35, 45? I don't understand what we're saying.
35 feet for a flat roof.
Okay,
If it
and
was
it's 45.
it would be
Okay.
43 is what's recommended in the plan.
Got it.
But then Ron is saying 45 would work.
For pitched roof.
For a pitched roof.
Oh my God, I was thinking he was trying to say 45 for a flat roof, so I wanted to clarify.
Oh, I see.
What's
the tallest building in
town right now?
For
45.
reference, I was about to say that, and it is the Kathmandu, and it appears, I just did some analysis on it, just looking, and it appears to me to be about 32 feet, 32 to 35, I would say.
That's correct.
That's 2 stories.
That's a
right?
two-story building. Yeah, worked on that. How about the idea of, you know, the pitched roof is not living space, or can it be living space? Or is that even an issue?
Yeah, that's a big
Yes, it could be living space.
storage and areas like that. One of the biggest problems the merchants have in downtown
Well,
Illinois.
storage is not living there.
Okay, but portions of it could be.
Okay. That was
This
clear.
is why France has Manford roofs,
Okay,
the exact reason.
okay, let's get it back on task.
So let me ask,
Well, it isn't saying that.
all right, but let me ask.
Let's go at 45, then to say that it shouldn't be,
It's-
it should be living.
Usable.
I keep feeling like we're very close to consensus and we keep getting off track. Okay, we got 20 minutes left. So I've heard Ron say 45 would work for him. I've heard Cheney say that
That's
that's,
usable space, Roger. It's not
Okay.
living, no.
and so this sounds like something, other feedback.
The only thing I'd say is we are absolutely not going to give you staff recommendation to approve something that fire says not to approve. So I think that that's the caveat here, and I think that really ultimately boils down to how tall their trucks are. But if you look at Tungsten Village, what they did is they built, I guess you guys approved it, but they have that step up, and that is how they handled their fire. So it's possible that this is a solution for you. I mean, that could be part of a solution there too. And you have that setback. So I guess what I'm saying is, and I think that's what Cheney was saying too, is that it really just comes down to
Okay,
if it's 45 or 43, or if you want to do that at all. And then the pitch roof, I guess the pitch roof too, but I didn't really say anything, I guess.
Fire rules trump all.
I guess.
There is
Trying to say-
someone that Brett or John knows the code back and forward, how height is measured in your zoning code, that needs to be taken into consideration, because on the south side of First Street, the lots do drop down about a story towards the creek. And so that's just a consideration to think about. Outside of Ron's site, we are talking about the whole downtown and what can happen south of First as well.
Well, that's-
And those
First
buildings
and
are
second.
probably already higher than 35 feet on that side if you measure them from the top down to the base.
There's an average, I'm fairly confident we have an averaging calculation.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
The code says from the middle of the lot.
Right.
So the middle of the thing, you measure from there. So you're probably right. At the south side, they are long.
And even in the middle of the co-op building, it's.
Well, that was there before we made the ordinance.
Sure, but it's now gonna be violating the law. It's
I mean,
violating the code right
Well,
now.
it's in
Legal
there.
non-conforming.
It's there, it's grandfathered in, so
It's not conforming.
It's legal non-conforming.
So just a thought. I mean, I think higher, 50 would be my recommendation.
so I'm gonna tell you, I was here for all of the meetings for Tungsten Village. And the number one complaint that people had was how tall the building
How high,
was.
yes.
And when we did the two duplexes over by Nod Group, the neighbors came out in droves and they wanted to drive that down and they managed to even drive it down below. I think we ended up on 27 feet for the height for those because they weren't even happy with 35 feet. So
Right.
if you tell me 50 feet and you think that that's gonna, that the.
Downtowns
And those buildings were even uglier than they would have been with 2 more feet.
Yeah.
Those are some of the ugliest buildings in
Well, I
Netherlands.
think that they're owned by somebody who cares about them too, so I think that's a really qualitative statement that's not appropriate for this meeting.
But at the same time, I think if they were a little bit higher pitched, it wouldn't really have made much difference to those people that were complaining. And this is part of the problem that I have with Netherlands is the minority rule. People scream and scream and scream. And, whether it was 2 feet higher in the middle, it wouldn't have mattered to their.
We're getting close to consensus, let's try.
Yeah.
It's really the making decision, I think.
Okay, so we're gonna find out, we're gonna table that. Right now, I feel like we have a consensus on 45 based on.
I guess the one thing I would just say when it comes to pitched roof at a certain higher height, that's one thing. But if the pitch is this way, that means this one edge of the building now is 43 feet high, and that's very different than a double pitched roof. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does, you're saying.
All of a sudden you got a 43 foot
All the way up to
wall
45.
versus a pitch is more of a setback. It kind of even those designs, when you set back the 3rd floor and you pitch things, it falls off your view shed. to a degree,
Isn't there another term for that type of roof, like a gable roof or something that we can use to
Yeah.
distinguish that from the sloping kind?
One with the ridge line. Well, one with the ridge line,
Roof is what you're talking about.
roof is one pitch.
Yeah, I think we're talking gable roof, not shed roof.
Okay.
We
Then
need
we'll
to
need
make
to
sure that gets put
specify
in.
that in the code.
So we're gonna find out more information from Ned Fire about what the limitations are from them. How about maximum stories of 3 stories? Any heartache with that?
Perfect.
Great. And hearing none, so
Do
moving
it
on.
under 35 feet.
20-foot setbacks for the 3rd floor if it's on First Street. So if you're allowed to build to 45 feet and have some kind of a rooftop area up there, the 3rd floor, for it to be that high, would have to have a setback of 20 feet, in which that could be some kind of community use space.
Yeah, as long as it could be, outside dining or a patio for an apartment.
That sounds awesome.
I don't have a problem with that. I have a
And-
problem.
Yes,
Tell us your problem, Ron, go ahead.
Well, if this is again all the way around the block, that takes cubic footage out of the envelope that's allowed for building. That's First Street.
So we would need to
So where do,
clarify if it's only facing the front facing edge of First Street,
On First Street.
which is what I think the intent is. Is that right?
Yes, it was along First Street. And also just to state there is a difference between a step back and a setback. And the reason we wrote a setback instead of every building go up 2 stories and then it has to step back is that it creates this wedding cake effect where, like Ron was saying, every building would be the same and 3rd floor step back. So a setback means that you could set back the entire building 20 feet and have the 3-story building all on the same face. Does that make sense? Here, I can show you the model that we did this is very crude architecture, but this is an example. You could do this and then step back. This is a 10-foot setback on the ground floor plane. And then the 3rd floor is set back 20 feet from the property line. This is an example that you could also do, which is a 3-story building set back 20 feet. And what that does is it gives options and it starts to create that in and out effect that people like, that Ron was speaking to, that, it's not just a straight building, a straight wall, that you have these options to kind of move in and out along the street.
That illustration is extremely helpful. Thank you. And it helps me understand.
that's what I was trying to demonstrate. That's a much better depiction.
Okay, I didn't understand your drawing. Sorry. Thank you, Shane. What do you think about that, Ron?
Good.
You're in favor. Great. How about anybody else? Other feedback? We're moving along.
I'm in favor.
Fantastic. We got a consensus. All right, moving on, last thing, eliminate this under yard bulk requirements, we might actually make it to allowable uses. Eliminate parking requirements for ground floor commercial. What do we think right now? There is none in the CBD, is that correct?
Yeah, I think, Ron, this is different from what you need for financing and things like your actual use. What this just does is say our commercial space is smaller scale. Basically, in that for smaller scale commercial, likely basically it's saying that you likely can't provide the parking that you're gonna need for every use. And I know this is different from your financing situation. I'm not talking about that, but just from the town perspective, what I would say is like your general mom and pop shop kind of thing or a smaller scale retail, you're not gonna be required. There would just not be a parking requirement there because we would be handling that through other means. It's not saying, it's just saying we wouldn't put that requirement on your development for ground floor commercial, maybe for residential and things like that, but not for the commercial aspect.
Seems like, I'm sorry, I just couldn't get what you said.
Essentially, this is less restrictive. That's less restrictive. It's not as restrictive.
We're taking away the requirement you were just unhappy about earlier.
We
You're
could make
saying
it more restrictive.
that no one else is complying with it, that you did, but we're saying, okay, we're gonna remove that parking requirement for ground floor commercial. Whereas you said, hey, I made the additional lot over here for this parking, so we're gonna look for other parking solutions, is that
So the
what
ones
the answer would be?
Yeah.
So up the second floor in Kathmandu and everything else has to require parking? Is that what it's saying?
No, I think he said ground floor commercial, but if it was residential,
Well, no, but there are commercial second floor. Why would you say?
Clarification
commercial?
question, does hotel fall into ground floor commercial use? Okay.
I think like that's the distinction here. So there's also, this says grandfathered uses here, potentially, that's part of it. But what it's saying is that nobody is ever gonna be able to provide, like, nobody could reasonably provide the parking that they're building. Even Ron, slightly different, because he could build an underground structure or something, or structured parking of any, some kind, right? But what it's saying is Netherland, the ground floor commercial is really what the downtown district is for. It's not Disneyland, but it's a place you go on a trip, like you're gonna go to explore downtown. And it's just recognizing that we have this other town parking and that we need to continue.
so we're not gonna take up valuable real estate there for parking if we can provide it elsewhere.
Right.
Okay.
Essentially.
We're tourists,
Oh, I
that's what you're
understand.
saying.
Well, people are coming in, like, patrons, maybe,
And tourists.
that might be the right word.
Sure, but I mean,
Even though I was told that.
Maybe there is no second.
Fly.
floor.
we build for local
Commercial.
first.
Okay,
That's
sure. I'm gonna say that, is there anybody who has a problem with that? Here, if we have anybody who wants to speak up against, eliminating commercial ground floor parking in the CBD or in this overlay district, now would be the time.
I think we have done that. It's kind of that.
But what we're gonna do is codify it because
Take the win.
yes, let's go on. So now we're gonna go to please go ahead.
I was talking to Chief Schmidtman, and he said current code is 30 foot for their height, and it has to do with the height of their ladder truck and ladders. And so I just wanted to tell you that was what I was told. So I think that doesn't mean that our code could be slightly different, because it could be there over time, things change, but I just wanted to put that in your heads.
Okay, so that's
Yeah,
something we're gonna have to look at.
Yeah, I mean, the building height will have to, the fire code will have to give it a thumbs up.
Well, then how can we have current height of 35 if they say they can only fight a fire up to 30 feet?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd heard Andrew say 35 feet before.
Yeah, we can get some more clarification on it.
What was the plan for Tungsten? What were they planning on doing?
I think the tower, I don't
It
know.
goes like this.
Right,
Yeah,
so
but I
they
think the tower
actually
goes up to
physically have get on
35.
the roof and drop a.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's unrealistic.
Nicole?
Part of what I wondered, and I'm not sure, if they were looking at 30 feet of where the, most likely window will be, so that they
my
can,
question.
yeah, so that they can evacuate people out of the window if necessary. So even though the building height might go up to
That
35,
makes sense.
a window wouldn't go all the way up to 35
I think you're right, and I think there's other code paths that can be used to accommodate.
to accommodate.
So that might be how it would work.
So that, not sure, please.
It makes
No,
sense.
that makes sense, and that was my point, exactly.
Yeah.
And their tower does only go up so far, the tower on their truck.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about number 7? So that's commercial. So one thing that we really had, we've only had one example, but that we would have mixed use, which is what we actually hope to actually have in First Street in a lot of areas. So does second floor mixed use residential require parking, or are we gonna
I would
just say?
strongly recommend you don't get rid of residential parking requirements. I don't think you should do that. I think,
Well, I don't,
Yeah.
I would agree
I
with
would
that.
agree with that, too.
I think we
Well-
could figure out ways to accommodate it so it works, but
Yeah, so I was only gonna bring up that, so the idea that the board right now gonna, saying no more, that you pretty much eliminated the requirement of parking in PUD. So have we eliminated in the future the idea of residential? So that's something that needs to be thought
I
about.
just wanna make sure we don't get this done tonight, huh? Well, another good.
Can I-
Yeah,
The intent
Again,
was,
approve 7, so someone could come in just a little bit later. Well, I understood that.
Cheney's trying to explain the intent.
yeah.
the intent with that was really looking at your smaller lots and how they are essentially undevelopable unless you remove the parking requirements. And it was just for commercial. We still recommended that residential uses. So if it's mixed use residential, the commercial aspect of that, typically on the ground floor would be exempt of parking, but the residential units would still have to meet parking requirements. And that is
Just ask a
because you have
question.
public lots and you have on-street parking, and the city's going through, parking studies to figure out where to provide more public parking. And so we felt that, and lots of cities do that.
He has other catalyst projects that do dramatically increase parking downtown, around downtown. It's based on the plan y'all did, and then if you've got, that's one of the other catalyst projects.
Yes, and believe, we're not gonna not look at increasing parking for the town. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
My concern is just with accessible parking. So for persons with disabilities or special needs, are we eliminating like parking such that they're gonna have to like park in some far away lot and not have access to also utilizing downtown?
I think those would be required and provided in public parking lots, like the lot in front of City Hall or on First Street, was the intent of that. It doesn't preclude.
With designated spots that are reserved for people with access needs?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna push on to allowable uses. We wanna talk, number one is, and we're gonna talk about both of them together. Explicitly allow outdoor sales, dining and activities without an SRU, that's recommended in the plan, and also limit marijuana use on First Street. And I know that was part of the things that were brought up during the public engagements. If Cheney has anything to add there, or the staff has anything to add, let's hear yay or nay why that would work or wouldn't work.
I do on the second one. I got a consensus from the last meeting, but if you guys change your mind, just let me know on the marijuana uses. It sounds like everyone was in favor of what's there now is there now, but not having more marijuana uses on First Street.
Right,
Yeah.
The discussion was, we want that to be a family friendly. If you've seen the renderings, it looks more like something that could be a possible festival street, not someplace where people are coming out of the hot shop with their.
I would like to see
So first one,
no use, and the current use would have to be grandfathered in, but if it ceases, that it's not allowed to continue or to be reinstated.
What?
I said,
yeah,
same reason, families.
Okay,
You want a family area, you want kids wandering into a marijuana shop, I don't think so.
They can't do that anymore.
Was it marijuana shop or use of marijuana? Like I know.
That's
That's what the uses are.
yeah,
yeah.
the storefront,
So then there's two shops already on First Street. What are you gonna do with that?
Yeah.
leave
Just
them.
said they're just gonna
Yeah.
remain.
Yeah, they'll
So
remain.
if they sell, they're gonna remain.
You can transfer the license. I think what they're saying is there would be a limit on how many shops could be.
Yeah,
So in future building, we wouldn't want And that's already kind of within the code under the amount of shops, but we wouldn't want to allow that to be the retail that's built on First Street. And so
To be honest, the minute,
Consensus there.
we had a consensus last month.
We did.
Yeah,
I should have never said that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that I'm completely on board with that. I'm not necessarily against it, but I'm not sure I agree.
okay. Well, when it comes time for this to come up, you can vote no.
Okay.
So explicitly allow outdoor sales, dining and activities without an SRU. That's what we're, and Shaney, could you tell us a little bit, or the staff, I believe the intent was to try and allow, I'm not even gonna explain, you tell me what you guys were trying to.
I'll take a crack and then Shane, you just fill in if you want, but I think the goal is, you see that Festival Street environment created. And I think one of the things that people wanted was that like European cafe style outdoor dining area, like clear space so there could be that. And just speaking to experience I have, that's what we did in Idaho Springs, essentially, as we created Minor Street and made it into a pedestrian mall. And so I think this would allow that to happen. I think our SRU process is really good, but some of these things are really kind of low key sales. And I think like our farmer's market is an example, like how the farmer's market happens. I think we want to promote outdoor vending when we can in safe places, how that can happen. And I think Ron's done a really good job doing that you promote a really great event on your lot. But I think that's what the goal would be, is to allow things that create that festival atmosphere on First Street as easily as possible. And I guess Cheney, that's kind of what we're thinking, right?
Yep.
I would, again, like to make a comment. In terms of festival atmosphere, I'd like to see include in the ordinance a common consumption area, which is allowed. You touched on it the last meeting. I don't think very many people understand it or know about it.
What is it?
Common consumption for alcohol, that's what you're doing.
What you do is you create a shared liquor
It's a state
license
law
permit
that
area.
allows it. You have to have 5
Yeah. So
restaurants and
district
22,000 square feet of floor space to get one created. But
I've done one before. It's something that we could do separately. It doesn't have to, it's probably better not to do it in the ordinance because there's some legal things for the people who have the liquor licenses. But I agree with you, that's something that is very, very good thing to have, especially for the way that we do special events. It would be much easier for people to do that. I think that's something we should consider strongly once we have this thing figured out, for sure. I agree with you.
So I have to ask a question about one. So, several years ago, we went from our PUD process, and knocked it down to 4 and allowed staff to handle, special review for, 1, 2, or 3 buildings to a certain thing, a minor thing. So
15%.
what you will form a process in lieu, for the dining process, that staff will have a menu of where they go through the process of licensing, the outdoor sales.
Are you saying?
Like
what-
guidelines. I think you're saying give us guidelines so that,
And it doesn't have to come to us, but you'll have a staff process.
Yes, there is some now,
Okay.
like, so right now you're allowed to like vend, so the way vending works right now is on private, like on Ron's lot. Ron can allow a vendor almost under any condition, like what happens for the farmer's market. There could be a special event permit that is issued for that because it's a public space. And that would allow all those people to kind of be covered under that vending license, essentially. We also have a process where on public right of way, you may set up not a peddler, but you may have a vending.
a lemonade stand, for instance.
As long as you meet certain requirements for ADA access. And it allows for advertising signs or selling is the way our current code is written. So I guess what I'm saying is there would be a process there. Now, one thing that needs to happen is we're probably going to be looking at some business licensing things over this fall, but that's not really a planning commission thing. But what would happen is there would still be criteria for how that would happen. If there's a liquor license involved, like if it was a dining thing, they would have to go through a liquor permit, which would require premise control and security and all those things. Dining it could be potentially even an encroachment agreement. That's how a lot of places handle it if it is using public space. But there would be some kind of process involved.
This is not, what I'm requesting is not public space. So in the past, what we did was where the barbecue place, their back deck, they had USRU.
Right.
The deck there at the. So we've done several of them, and I agree that was crazy. So my question is, so when it's on part of a bar, part or whatever it is, that, there would be a process that they
Yeah.
come to you.
This would be like a full outdoor activity too, not a building structure. Like an example would be, there was what was it, Britt, the hot tub or whatever that was,
It was a sauna and cold plunge.
yeah, so you
Yeah.
basically, well, do you want to just talk about what we did for that right now?
I think it ended up being, because I wasn't fully involved in that one, but I think it ended up being some sort of peddler's license, and then we got improvement from the fire department on the sauna itself.
Because those things were movable.
Right.
Well, removable,
We have had-
exactly.
We've had other inquiries for businesses like that, and I think one thing is like some of our empty lots, there could be a pop-up thing that would happen there, like or something. I guess the question would be is like I guess what do you feel comfortable with in that?
Well, my question was really, well, it's really like the outdoor sales, so is it separate, where you don't go back out into the public, you go back into the restaurant and through and out, so that there's at least a process that you looked at what they're asking and approve it. That's
Yeah,
all.
so currently in our code, if you do outdoor sales, dining and activities, so for instance, like Busey Brews with the outdoor, you have to go through an SRU. So he's saying he'd feel comfortable with there being some kind of guidelines where instead it's like explicitly allows staff they have to meet these requirements that like we
They
have
do
as staff to
the
check off.
Requirements and
Yep.
check it off as opposed to
Yep.
holding an entire meeting and charging them $250.
Yeah.
That's what we've always done in the past, and
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to.
And it would be activities that have to be in
Streamline.
the use table still, right? Like we wouldn't allow an activity that's not generally allowed in CBD.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that would be like the maybe correct term, because I mean, and that really falls under the peddler's licensing. So it really just be, I mean, I think, actually, let me pull up how it is specifically worded.
Maybe you just need to work on it to take those two processes.
Yeah, I see what
And
you're,
then you could have a process that staff would use to okay that outdoor sale.
yeah, so right now, yeah, so how they word it on our use group table is outdoor sales, eating and drinking, or other outdoor commercial activities or establishments. And currently they're restricted in neighborhood commercial, CBD, and general commercial.
But if
So
I
they have
wanted-
to go through an SRU.
If I wanted to do like a auto shop and I just want to put a lift in the middle of the CBD and on my lot, like I buy Snyder's lot, I just put a lift there and I want to have that like light industrial use right there.
Yeah,
That activity would still be not allowed in CBD. Like that's kind of what we probably look at from our perspective is
Yeah.
that activity is not allowed. Whereas
Yeah.
like a general sales or dining kind
Yeah.
of thing would be.
you're coming out with a little, cart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the point of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Janie, was just to eliminate like that extra step for something we have right now. So that like, if we do have another restaurant or a bit, like say a coffee wine shop that wants to have that outdoor use, they don't have to go to the planning commission for the SRU process. And Roger would be more comfortable with staff having a checklist of like, yeah, you've met the criteria to start running this. Maybe not like an additional process, but something that, like when you do your actual building permit or you pull
it's
your
not just a
business
free-
license, yeah,
Mhm.
you have to meet criteria.
No,
That are allowed.
Those outdoor sales.
Well, like you said, a lift. would
We've
not
had,
be part of
we've had some
Yeah.
people inquire about things like spa-like activities, like where there would, like Britt said, like this cold plunge thing or something where they want to have this. And one of the questions, that's difficult because that's not really contemplated in our code right now, like how that would work. But, and there might be a noise component, there's other components that might be coming into play there from even a land use perspective. And that's what I was saying is activities are maybe different than dining and
Yeah, right,
sales.
because that does fit more under the peddler's
Yeah,
kind of license. It's a pop-up thing.
Yeah.
It's temporary. This is what we're talking about is like seasonal. and
Patio.
They are allowed to have a patio
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
year.
I think we're getting towards the line.
So what I hear is that it would be good for us not to have to go through the SRU process, but for the staff to have some kind of a
Right.
process to check and be sure that that is allowable use.
Yeah.
Can we get a nod from everybody? Right. All right. So unfortunately, it is now 7:51. We got through 40% of what we were trying to get through tonight. Here, I'm just gonna quickly talk about the things we did not touch on tonight for you to think about. Design standards, building height, width and massing. That was gonna be adopting a width of no more than 200 feet for any single building, maximum width, and require 40-foot architectural breaks within that 200 foot to break up the monotony of the buildings. It requires third floor step back along First Street, establish a maximum footprint for development, i.e. It says greater than half a block. So essentially, they wouldn't want your building to be the entire block of First Street as one building. These are things we haven't talked about. We're not gonna have time to tonight. We're gonna come back to it.
One suggestion is pick one thing and use the next 10 minutes to get that.
We don't have 10 minutes. We have to reconfigure the room. And then exterior building materials and roof forms, storefront pedestrian realms, compatibility standards. So if you guys want to look, get this checklist off the packet from the work session and look at what we did not get to, we'll talk about this more at a future meeting.
We done well.
I think we've done
And we have.
Yeah.
Shot before the next
To go
one.
through those.
We're gonna have to have some discussion during the meeting about that,
Okay.
because I mean, yes, clearly we're gonna have to have some more work.
I think you probably could schedule another work session for this. I think it would be, we could even do it, figure out what works for you guys and get it done, and maybe
Yeah.
even get done before your next regular meeting, but
Sometime between now and,
yeah.
okay,
Cause it probably won't take you that long to go through the rest of it.
I'll send out like a doodle poll.
yeah, let's do that, and let's try and find a time to have another work session between now and the next planning commission, at least a week before the next planning commission, whenever, and we'll get the staff put in your dates first, and then we'll work around that. And we'll continue on with this process. I appreciate the input. I think we did make some headway. And I think the main thing that I want to allay your concerns on, Ron, is that if there is some specific things that come up in the process of your PUD, we're willing to try and look at that and make reasonable allowances. I'm not saying that we're gonna give you everything you ask for, but I'm saying that we're willing to look at all these things. And there's nothing set in stone that we're gonna be like, sorry, nope, this is what it says. There's no way, if you then come with a good case, say, here's why this will absolutely not work for you. Okay?
A lot of it, that's true. And then just make a comment. A lot of the design work that I've been involved in on this block has to do with the topography.
Yep.
Entrances for parking, are more dictate the size of the building. And if you pass a plat that can only be 200 feet, and that interferes with the way to get access to parking underneath the building, it won't work. So
That's the next discussion.
Everyone will mind, I'm just gonna mute it while we set up for the next meeting, and then I'll unmute and we'll be good to go. But it's gonna be the same meeting, like, thank you.
Talk about
Jennifer. Hello?
I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Jennifer, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
I found it. Is this blue one for your phone? Is that you?
No. Kelly, is that your phone?
Is this you? Yeah. I was gonna say.
Test.
Check, check. You hear anything coming out of that speaker, Ron? Okay. Okay, folks online, and those of us in the room, we're going to, or go ahead, I'll let you go, Brent.
No, I was just gonna make sure. Could they hear us online? Did we check? Can you guys hear us?
Yes, I can
Okay,
hear you.
perfect. Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, we just finished up our work session. Feel like it was productive. We made it through a good chunk of it. Oh, yes.
Call to order at 8:04. And Chair Reese,
Present.
Commissioner Cornell,
Here.
Commissioner Dye,
Here.
Commissioner Pinziner,
Here.
Commissioner Mahold,
Here.
Commissioner Glasser,
Here.
Commissioner Duggan is absent, Vice Chair Williams is absent, and Mayor Pro Tem Sterling.
Is here.
Save you for last.
Okay, thanks very much. Just briefly wanted to say that the work session went pretty well. What we determined was that we need more discussion. So during the next week, we're going to come up with a date for a second work session to complete discussion and input on the remainder of the checklist for the overlay district. Okay, and if somebody, did everyone have a chance to look at the minutes?
Captured it well. And I always, when I look at it a couple of weeks after, your memory's better than mine.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, no typos, no changes.
Thank you.
That a motion?
Anybody else have anything that you saw? I didn't see any errors or anything. I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the January 23rd PC meeting minutes.
I second that.
Okay, please call the vote.
Commissioner Mahold,
Yes.
Commissioner Glasser, Commissioner Pinziner,
Yes.
Commissioner Dye,
Yes.
Commissioner Cornell,
Yes.
Chair Reese.
Yes.
Alrighty.
Okay. If there's any not other business that is a non-agenda item, if there's anybody in the room that would like to discuss that, now would be the time. I don't see any. So if anybody online, you have some non-agenda item, other business you would like to bring up, now would be the time. Okay. I wonder if this would be a time for us to continue a little more discussion on the sub-area plan under other business, or if that would be something that we need to get to our agenda and then come up with other business at the end.
I think that might be a good Jennifer question. You can talk into other business. Sometimes it's not good to have a too wide ranging of a conversation in other business, but I don't know what you,
What I'm asking, Attorney Mattson is if we could discuss a little further some of the details of, that we had during the work session under other business, even though it's not an agenda item, or if we should just stick to the agenda.
I think it's because it's a topic that is of particular interest to the public. And it wasn't noticed on your meeting. I think it would be important to wait for a work session to go into further discussion.
Okay, we will follow that advice. Thank you. So we'll have a work session at some point once we can get all aligned on that. So then if that's the case, let's go ahead and go to the first discussion item.
well, Chair and Commissioners, at the last meeting of the Board of Trustees, we brought forward some work that we've been doing to look at codifying the advisory boards and commissions into code for Nederland. As you know, you all have a statutory authority that is in state statute, and some of the work that you do is quasi judicial and has some especially when you're working on a land use case. Those are the things that you do that are kind of dictated by state statute, and we have to have a planning commission. You also have kind of a legislative role as well, and that's one of the things we're doing right now is we're building an ordinance. That's kind of what we're doing with this overlay district. That would in the future be something that would have kind of land use implications. But one of the things that's kind of come up over the past few months is that Nederland would benefit from looking at bringing all of the boards into alignment a little bit better. And that's meeting with the Board of Trustees and making sure that we have really good, consistent work plans, that the board knows what's happening at each of the boards and commissions, and then vice versa, so that when work is happening, it's easier to move it kind of up and down the chain and have those conversations. And also to make sure that work is kind of generally in line with the strategic goals and plans of the town. The ordinance that we brought to the board had a lot of different kinds of things in it. It talks about formation scope, membership requirements, appointment terms, removal procedures, staggered terms. It did have some language in there about term limits, making sure that we're compliant with open meeting laws. It talks about adopting bylaws and annual work plans that are aligned with town goals that would come to the Board of Trustees. It talks about how we assign our staff liaisons to the boards. And so for you all, that's Britt, and then obviously I come as well. But Britt is your primary staff liaison, and it makes them responsible for preparing agendas and materials, maintaining records, and making sure that the board can carry out its duties. It also would codify our existing boards. Unlike Planning Commission, ProSab and SAB are not actually codified, and they do important work for the town too. So they work in sustainability and parks, trails, open space, and recreation, or I guess not really recreation right now, but that's kind of the intent. I think that really this is in the aim that you have, but what this would do is just really strengthen the working relationships between our advisory boards and the Board of Trustees and make sure nobody's working on an island. I know that there's been questions about how the board directs work to different bodies to work on it. And I think you guys are experts in your land use capacity, which is really great. And I think what this does is it just clarifies communication pathways, make sure staff is involved as is appropriate, and just kind of make sure that everything is working the way that it needs to work. One thing I wanted to note is in the board meeting, the primary thing that the Board of Trustees asked us, there was two, was that first of all, term limits are probably not what we want. They think and they're rightly so, they can consider how long somebody served on a board when they're going through the appointment process. And with our small town and just kind of the workload that everybody has, having volunteers that are willing to serve is really important. So we want to preserve that. The other thing that they asked us to do is bring this to all the boards and commissions. And when that's something that is important too, it's a policy question, and it's right for that to originate at the Board of Trustees. They need to tell us that this is something that we should be working on. But also, I think it's really important to them that this works for you all and it works for the other boards. So we have talked about this a little bit with ProSab. The intent is to talk about it with SAB as well, and then you all. And then I think what we'd like to do is bring your feedback to the board again. This is not something that has to happen tomorrow. If you guys want to talk about it a little bit more, you can. If you want to see a final version of what this might look like, that's something we can do too, because the intention is to make sure everybody's aligned and that we've got a really good working relationship for everyone. So I am available for questions. Mayor Pro Tem Sterling's here too, and she's your board rep. And so she's also here for that same purpose. But if you have questions for either one of us, we're happy to answer.
Okay, clarifying questions, I'm sorry, is there any public comment on this? Anybody in the room, Ron, or anybody online that would like to make public comment about this? Having heard or saw none, let's go clarifying questions for the staff.
I've got a couple. First of all, it's streamlining. Or number one, are all the boards now going to be 9 people?
No, that's actually a question that came up with Planning Commission too. There's some 7s in there, like the 7-member boards that we have. There's also some this is really about, in a lot of ways, it's about the advisory boards because their role is just a little bit undefined and they're a little bit different how they're kind of formatted. But I think one of the things we'd like to do, and I think it was something that came up with the Board of Trustees, and I think Mayor Pro Tem Sterling, if you have any other thoughts on this, but generally the idea is make them consistent so the membership is consistent and the terms are consistent and the work, at least the description of work and kind of what people are doing is consistent, even though it's different kind of thing. And board membership was one of the things we talked about. One of the things that did come up in the board conversation is that you might have a more agile board at 5 or 7 than at 9, potentially.
Okay, second question, this came about for a reason. What was the reason? Did we have where were the inconsistencies between the boards?
Yeah, I don't think it was a deficit position necessarily, like something was happening incorrectly. I think it's more about making sure we've heard a lot from since I've been here. One of the things I've tried to do is meet with all the boards and the chairs and make sure that we're talking to people and trying to understand pain points. And I think one thing that has happened is that the advisory boards are technical working boards right now, right? And in kind of best practice for government, what you really want is you want staff to be leading some of that work and they should be providing aims like they do for this body. But you want to preserve the fact that we do have experts in our community that are very good at doing what they do. So we're trying to find a balance to make sure that staff is there to provide the framework we need for the governance piece and that we're involving the Board of Trustees in the policy questions that do pop up in the right place so that we're not spending time or resources on things that are not possible. I'll give you an example is like maybe somebody thinks of a grant that would be good for us to apply for, but it has a big match. Well, that needs to come to the board no matter what, but also it needs to come at the appropriate time. So we're not wasting a bunch of resources doing something that we can't do. And so I think that's what we're trying to do is make sure that those structures are in place so that everybody knows when things get pushed and staff's role. Because I think the other thing is, with the new digital accessibility laws and like open meeting laws and all these different requirements for agendas, it is important that we're putting those agendas together. And then there's times where staff needs to put something on the agenda. And so one thing that happens for Planning Commission that's really great is Jim typically will meet with Britt. They have a one-on-one, usually I'll come to, and we're working on those things as we go. And that's a really good structure. So we're just trying to make sure that we have those structures in place so that the boards can still push what they need to, and that the policy questions are answered by the Board of Trustees and directed and that kind of thing. And that we're just trying to get tight.
Last one. Did I see something in here that the preference was to not have people sit on multiple boards?
That was something that was discussed. I think that's one of the questions about how that works. I think there's the two trains of thought would be, the number one would be, is you want as many people participating as possible, but also in a constrained position where you have limited volunteers, then you need to be thinking about that. One thing that could come up with some of our boards is there may possibly be a time where serving on 2 boards could create a conflict of interest or it could create other problems. It's not always the case with a legislative action, though. So if it's a legislative action, it's probably not something that would matter too much. And I think we do want the Board of Trustees having these liaisons on the boards, but that's just something that we need to be constantly monitoring. That's something that Jennifer already does. So if there's a decision that would need to be made, we can kind of control for that. But I think that's kind of the balancing act there.
Great. I remember about 90 days ago, we were shorthanded on a lot of boards and you were recruiting pretty hard. Did we resolve all that? Are we at full strength?
No, we are not.
No, we aren't.
Yeah.
So if you know anyone We're gonna be releasing that again.
Yeah, especially the DDA is looking for members right now.
Case in point, could anybody be on the GDA and planning commission? Is that what you're trying to eliminate?
I don't think we've really, we don't have direction on that yet.
Okay.
Feedback. Had some. I can't find it right now, but I was trying to find in there. I thought I saw that the BZA was the one exception. That you could serve on that board and be on another person. One person, yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah. BZA is like a kind of a different animal because its purpose is very focused and in what happens legally there. So there's really not a legislative action that happens there. They really only meet if there needs to be something that they need to meet about.
Yeah, and currently our person is Roger. He's one of our alternates.
As an alternate.
Yep, as an alternate.
Okay. Other clarifying questions for the staff or for Mayor Pro Tem Sterling?
Jim, I have one. So well, you wanted our input, are you wanting our input for, even the parts about sustainability or about Parks and Rec for this whole thing, or just about the planning commission?
We'll take anything you got.
Okay. My other question is from reading, when I read the planning commission, I think it's pretty much what it says. So there's, correct? So there've been no changes there.
No, there's a change. I'm gonna bring it up here in a minute.
There is? Okay. And, all right.
Sorry, for the most part, it's the same.
Well, good catch.
The work plan is one thing. That's a requirement. That would be a requirement.
What was my part of that then was, so clarify, because we have certainly had more than the term limits. Are you saying you didn't recommend term limits for the planning?
We added it into the ordinance that the board looked at. And I think what we're trying to do is create an ordinance to look at, and you got to kind of go with something. But that was the conversation at the board, is term limits they didn't feel was appropriate. And that for exactly the reason we just talked about, we need to have people who are willing to serve.
Didn't feel it was appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was gonna ask Nicole, if you wanted me to resign, you didn't have to go through this whole ordinance.
It's not about any
I
particular
think it's
person.
valued,
My-
absolutely
yes.
valued experience beyond just needing volunteers. We need volunteers who actually know what's happening and have the history and the context. So I support no term limits as well.
Yeah, provide all of your feedback. That's what it's here for.
So we're still doing clarifying questions and then we'll get into discussion. Any other clarifying questions? My only clarifying question for the staff or for Nicole was, I thought that we pretty well had this laid out, other than the term limits piece and the removal piece in our Netherland Planning Commission bylaws. And I wondered, is this an attempt to try and standardize the rest of the boards more similar to what we're doing, or are you unhappy with our bylaws?
No, it's really meant to standardize things across the board from a communication flow perspective. Alignment and goals, that kind of thing also becomes a byproduct of this. And what we have established for the planning commission works really well. And so now we're looking for how can we codify and standardize amongst our other boards, because they do not operate in the same way.
Okay.
So
I can add too, from like a staff perspective, it's really hard when you take over another staff member and their board doesn't run the same as yours. And then like, it's not very receptive. And so it's really hard to say, well, this is how my board runs. And then you start running them that way. And then the board's like, that's not how we run. And so I think this would just be clarity if there's turnover and, hopefully not, but just that all of our boards are the same. And so all staff have the same expectation on how it's ran, what we do, and how to teach other people that come in as well.
Okay, a standard for all boards essentially, even though there's some specific things between the boards that are not the same, but
Yeah.
wherever they can be standardized, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is kind of a specific clarification question, but I'm looking at page 14 in the packet, page 4 of the ordinance number under section C, removal. And it says that, blah, blah, trustees may be removed by a resolution of the Board of Trustees with or without cause and with or without notice and hearing. I was just curious about the thinking behind the without cause.
Well, buddy, a little farther down, it says removal provisions in this section do not apply to the planning commission, which is governed by removal requirements as set forth in the Colorado statute there. So they actually.
Yes, yeah. And I wasn't thinking about the planning commission itself.
Oh,
but it was-
everyone else.
It was everybody else. Yeah.
And so the question, what's the
Yes.
specific, question?
Oh, what's the thinking behind the possibility of removing somebody without cause?
I mean, John, if you have more that you would like to add to
Their
that.
advisory boards, the Board of Trustees, the Board of Trustees appoints them and the Board of Trustees can choose to change that. And that's just,
Right.
that's kind of how it already is. It's just
Okay.
making sure that it's explicit.
Kind of like serving at the pleasure of the president whenever he
Yeah.
decides it's not his pleasure.
My
you're gone.
contract is like that too. It says malfeasance essentially, which
Right.
is a very,
Open-ended.
it's not ambiguous, but it could cover a lot of things. And so it's one of those things I think in government, the Board of Trustees, I think the best way to think about it is the Board of Trustees is the point of the mountain and they need to be because they're elected by the people and they need to be responsive to the electors and then the boards need to be responsive to them as well for the same reason. So.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay, if we're done with clarifying questions, let's close that portion and move on to the discussion portion. Any input or discussion for the staff from planning commission members? Now would be the time.
I just wanted to add that Timmy joined at 8:22.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Timmy Duggan joined at 8:22.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Reese, can I ask one more question too? This is really a work in progress. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. If you guys have things, I think just thinking about how your board has worked and if there's been pain points for you that would help with this communication. The ordinance is one piece, but also we want to keep working on this. This should be one of our strategic priorities next year is to like how we make sure that there's no obstacles. And that's what I think about a lot for staff. How do we make sure staff has no obstacles in their way so they can just execute? I want the same thing for you. I want you guys to be executing what you need to execute and making sure that this relationship is good. So if there's things like that too that we can address, I think that this is a good time to be thinking about that and what would make your jobs the most effective.
Okay, well, let's start with the biggest sticking point that I saw there, and I've heard it come up twice now with Elizabeth and Roger. And that was the recommendation that nobody is allowed to serve on 2 consecutive terms. I've heard you say that wasn't something that everybody was in favor of, but I just want to ask our group here, is there anybody here that, or let me rephrase that. Are you in favor of not having that because of the experience? I mean, we with the planning commission, I'll come up for renewal next year and I'll be gone if this gets passed. Roger will be gone. He'll have already served more than 2 terms. Linda will be gone. And so you'll effectively gut the experience of this important board. And so I just wonder, I personally my feedback is that I think that should be removed and there shouldn't be those kind of alarm. You already want to, if you need to remove somebody, you're looking at it for no cause or for whatever cause it is that the board determines. I personally do not think that that's something that should be in the ordinance. Any other feedback or anybody disagree with that? Yes, sorry about that.
I tend to agree with what you just said, and plus the experience and the limited, which we have so few volunteers on board that it's hard to recruit new people. Plus, just being on the board, what I have learned takes a while for new members to take over. So I think we would be hurting ourselves if we limited the terms.
I agree. There's a learning curve.
It's intimidating to somebody who's coming in from the outside.
Yes.
I I was, when I was just clarifying my question, I really wasn't trying to editorialize, but my comment that actually I think would be good for the discussion of the board was that we all have terms, and when that term is up, it goes back to the board and the mayor has the choice of, selecting, and then the board. So so basically we have continuous terms, but we are reviewed and renewed each time. So I think that's actually the answer. If someone was saying, that this is, that, the longevity, well, no, I have not served 20 years. I've served several terms, and each time, if someone else had an application and that the board gets to review that, well, we'd rather, go in this direction. So I think that's actually very healthy. So I would just say that that's a good discussion that the board could have at that level to answer that question. Because basically there is a review process.
Yeah, and each time that your term is finished, you're doing the process of a new application.
Yeah.
And you're putting your new reasons as to why you want to be on the board. So I think that clarifies, like what you said, Roger, it clarifies your reason. It's not automatic.
Okay. Great. I feel like we have consensus that we would prefer the language not say no one is allowed to serve more than 2 consecutive terms. And we've given you the reasons why. And you can hear that specifically and bring that feedback back to the BOT. Hopefully they
I'm
agree
writing
with that.
Email for John to compile all this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For Board of Trustees, are there going to be term limits?
There already are.
I was wondering if they're contemplating removing them.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, and I think that's one of the things that is a corollary is, Commissioner Maholdy said it's a lot to take in, and you would prefer to have somebody with experience. The BOT is constrained in that way. We do have to rotate out. We do have to get new folks in, regardless if they're people who want to apply or not. And so that's just the other flip side of the coin, is to consider that, is that the BOT is already an example of, we have term limits, and it is just as hard because we, as John said, we're at the peak. We have to look over everything, not just land use.
I guess I would say that there's value in having a board that is familiar with the code that transcends BOTs, an board of experience that, Roger's experience and institutional knowledge about what's happened in the town and the history he's able to provide, I think is very valuable. And that it would be, you guys are going to do what you want to do. And like you said, like Roger said, at every 4-year period, we have to come back before you and, get approval to stay on. I think that meets the goal on whether or not, as opposed to saying, okay, well, you can't even apply because you served the last 2 terms. You've been here 8 years. Sorry, you're out.
Sure, absolutely. And that maybe there is something even in between of a term limit, but you can still apply and be reviewed and approved. I don't know. Like, this is part of the discussion, right? But I will also say that that same argument of, well, it's really valuable to have folks on the other boards, not just code, sustainability, parks and recreation. They're all making the same, they could all make the same argument as well. It's really good to have someone that outlives the BOT. And so we've got to take all of those data points into consideration and like, where is the right balance? Absolutely. I want Roger around forever. So again, it's a proposal. This is meant to spark discussion. This is meant to get, our brains thinking in a different way. For sure.
So does staff have what it needs?
I do. Is there more we're gonna touch on? Do you want me to add anything, Commissioner Dye, about the without cause or anything like that?
No, it was
Okay.
a clarification question.
I do. I have one more question for you. I kind of asked you already, but I'm just going to ask it one more time. I know there's been pain points at times in just how things have worked. And I think that's what is important to me. I want to make sure that, I guess an example, say the Board of Trustees has an issue come up that might have land use implications where there is a legislative question, maybe about chickens, potentially. I don't know. How how does that create a pain point for you? And is there anything that we might want to address in how this works that would help with that? Like, or something like in that case where there is work that you guys are asked to do and how that would affect your work plan. And maybe it's really, that's more of a working norm kind of thing where we need to think about how our structures work. And it doesn't need to be codified in an ordinance, but I just want to ask and make sure that you guys feel like you have the tools, because this ordinance, really should give everyone the tools to collaborate. So we create this environment that is not that we have to be like rolling all the time and going 85 miles an hour, but does this give you what you need to be effective? And I think ultimately that might be a really big question, that there's other pieces that we need to address. But I just want to ask that question one more time.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Or your question, is there any other things that?
Is there things that would make your work easier when we're thinking about an ordinance that is intended to align people and to align your work to the Board of Trustees with the intention of making your work more efficient and effective? And honestly, like Nicole said, I think you guys are a very functional board. So I think this may be kind of a misnomer for you. But when you think about what would make your communication more effective, we have that work plan with the intention of that being is there'd probably be a work session where you would, or someone would at least come to the Board of Trustees and say, these are our priorities. And we've kind of talked about that a little bit, like things like a Chapter 16 audit and rewrite, whatever it is, like however that looks. But those kinds of things, we want to make sure that you have those processes in place. And thinking about 10 years down the line when there's new people everywhere, like how do we make sure that what you have to work is effective? And I there may not be anything in this ordinance, is I guess what I'm saying, but I just want to make sure that if there is something that you think would help, that we're kind of thinking about how we write this right now.
Just in my short time on this board as a voting member, I've noticed a couple things. Number one, the packets are complete and they're giving me enough time in advance to prepare it, and I really applaud that. The minutes are good and the aims are good. They're spelled out what it is what the question really is, and I think that helps focus a lot. So I don't have any problems in terms of process, and I think I think we should have a work plan, and I think that work plan should be reviewed with the Board of Trustees before we embark on it. I got no issues there, so I don't think you've missed anything from my standpoint.
I agree. If you feel anything, I feel that, well, I'll speak personally for myself, that, what we've gone through is a transition of you coming on board and understanding that Britt has a new role. Before that, she was just, a technical person. I remember a month ago or so, I asked you, I thought you would be, I asked you the question. You said, well, don't ask me. That was ask Britt. And that didn't really throw me back, but it was like a light bulb came on. So I think there's just, if you're sensing anything, it's just been that whole transition of learning how to be a team and work together. And I feel like we're hitting on all cylinders right now. So I think we all should be congratulated, especially you, John, and Britt.
Britt has done a ton of work moving planning forward in the last year, so.
Which I definitely appreciate, and it helps us, be able to make the most of our time. I think that, I don't know, previously, I don't remember us doing work plans and presenting it to the BOT, but we did this year, which I thought was very helpful. And I think that that's something, that requirement is something that, I don't have a problem with. I think that's good, and it helps us. I mean, we're always going to adjust if there's something else that takes priority or something that comes up. We have to be nimble and be able to deal with that. But it's good to try and lay out what our goals are for the year. And in fact, I almost wanted to talk to you a little bit about more, maybe a 2 or 3 year plan to kind of really see what's coming down the line even beyond January. But
are all boards using forecasters now?
No, that is something we'd like to we want to implement that better.
Okay.
I think Planning Commission uses one. I think they all technically have one. It's just
Everyone has
Yeah.
one, just not everyone's good at using one. I'll put it like that.
so we're working towards standardization. I see the bigger picture here, what you're trying to get. You're trying to get, be able to have the most productive use of time for these boards.
I
And
make,
that we're rowing in the same
yeah.
direction.
I make Mayor Pro Tem Sterling and Mayor Giblin meet me and set the agenda for at least 2 meetings in advance every month. And I would like to do more. And I think that's just kind of brain, like, I want to know what's coming. One thing that's a challenge for staff that can be a capacity issue is when a board meeting kind of gets planned on the fly and then the aims have to be developed really quickly. And that also impacts Jennifer, because especially for your work, because she does need to review on the legal pieces of those. And so what I would really like to have is where we generally have this all mapped out so the aims can happen earlier and we can develop them, and then we can really make sure that the product you're getting is a little bit more polished, where also you have time to read, because there will be times when, say, like a bigger land use case comes, that could be 200-page packet maybe, and I want to make sure you guys have those packets as soon as possible so that you can be reviewing them and have adequate time to kind of put your notes together.
Well, I can tell you wherever possible, even if the packet isn't complete, that we could get a little bit, hey, we got the meat of it put together so you can start looking at it, for if it was a big thing, I don't know. There might be times where that's not possible, but anytime where we could have more time to absorb, not everybody is retired military like
Yeah.
me and can spend all day, on Monday looking at the packet. They have jobs and things they got to do. So, but I think we're already, we're meeting that standard, except for what you just said. I see room for improvement, and I'll start talking to you about 3 months out for what we're gonna, as opposed to just 1 month.
I mean, I think you're doing great. I think my goal is to start getting, I noticed there's a lot more productive conversation when we have this packet Wednesday or Thursday. And so that would be my goal. And then I think it's just us, which I think we've done great as staff chair and town manager of, actually being realistic about what we can accomplish in a meeting instead of overwhelming the planning commission. So I think we're doing good.
Can we get a packet on Wednesday or Thursday?
That is actually, that's kind of like a goal we've been talking about the staff level. So
Because no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I want you all to have as much time as possible, but it's just, it's,
Oh, that's helpful.
I understand the constraints on working families with jobs, but
we're trying to standardize our aims too. That's another thing that'll be another conversation just over time. We want to develop them so they're giving you what you need and that they're all, reasonable length, because that's the other thing. They can't be too long or everybody does. It's hard to read that. So we want to give you what you need and how you need it. And that's something I think we were dialing that in a little bit. I think we got that with the sub area plan. We kind of dialed it. So we want to keep working on that. We've been working on tools to do that better. And, there's different kinds of making sure we give you good questions. That's the other thing that we can work on, is just making sure that the deliberation questions are
Clear.
set up for you to be able to have that conversation the right way. And so these are some of the things that Britt and I have been really talking about and how we do that. And Nicole has been a little bit involved in that too, just helping us think about how we can use tools to be most effective in that space. And so that's what we want to do. I think it's not so much, like I was saying, there's not a deficit here. It's not like there's a huge problem. It's just, we want to be innovative and constantly thinking about process improvement and making people effective.
Oh, I applaud progress wherever we can get better, incremental progress. We should always be striving for that. Go ahead.
yeah, one more thing to say about this. So, Chair Reese, you had said, wow, it was great to have the work plan and like to think 2 or 3 years out. And this is all very deliberate, why we're bringing this to you now. If we are ever so fortunate to acquire a mountain, we all need to just sort of jump the game in terms of how we communicate between boards, how we think about things, how we execute our process. And so this coming before you is a deliberate part of that. We're looking to jump the game across everywhere.
That totally makes sense. Can you say a little bit more in depth about why that's so important?
You think about any organization that you have, and if we're all sort of going in the same direction, right? There are always going to be things, I think each of the boards, they're going to have like a couple of the things that they'd really like to pursue. But if we can imagine all of our boards sort of operating in unison with each other, we have a goal alignment, we have an understanding of where we're headed as the community, that's huge. That's a big deal, right? Instead of having where, what I've felt, and especially in my first couple of years, is this board is kind of doing this, this board is doing this board is over here. So like that work plan and solidifying goals of the BOT, that was huge.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
It also lets us put financial resources where they need to go when the board
Exactly.
doing budgeting.
Yeah. And so as we start to sit down for our strategic plan and knowing where those priorities are, we as the BOT do not become fragmented either. We can say, these are the priorities. John, this is where we need grant funding.
Hmm.
We need to find it. Right. So it's not this very fractioned
Reactive.
reactive.
Mm.
This is an attempt to be proactive across all of our boards.
One thing I think is gonna be real helpful is you try and align things as a master calendar for the year. You switch when you do budgeting, for instance, so that rolls that, a master calendar is gonna be very helpful that we can all look at.
My goal is that December is not a month where we're rushing on anything. Like that's where I'd like Netherland to be, I'd like the budget to be done at Thanksgiving. And so we kind of built this, but you're right, we need to do that. And I think that helps the DDA, helps all these bodies. And so I think that's something we can work on and get that done really quickly. But that's kind of what this year, there's been a couple really big wins we had this year that are a little bit more on the nerdy government side. One of the big ones is we were able to finish our audit in May, which is not a thing that normally happens. Normally it's due at the end of July, like July 31st, and it's usually done on July 31st. And that is how government works. But this year we were really fortunate to be done early, which allowed us to start our budget process earlier. And that means that we're going to be able to maybe start having some movement on that. And it gives us more nuanced conversations for really important things that happen there. So I 100% think that's a wonderful idea. Thank you for saying that. And we can start working, putting some together. We could do it for, we could probably have a whole year-long calendar. So the other thing is that we could contemplate better. You guys aren't going to want to meet on Christmas or whenever, like you have off meetings that are on bad days. We could do that earlier in the year where we make those decisions. So you guys all have the calendar set in your heads and
Yeah,
we're
we
not, like,
always
rushing
know
at
that
the end.
Thanksgiving and Christmas are gonna
Yeah.
fall right in that same week where our meeting is, so maybe that just becomes a standard that we bump it up a week or whatever works best. I agree. Thank you. This is g- other than the one amount of feedback there about the term limits, I think that the professionalization and standardization of boards is a good thing and will help us be more productive. So any other final comments on that so we could get the staff out of here?
I just have one quick comment on, with the advice of staff, and I know that we have the flexibility as a commission to have subcommittees if we are overwhelmed with different, where we need research on certain subjects, that we can bring information back to the planning commission. And we've done that in the past, and I think it's been very helpful.
Linda, pull that a little closer to you, would you?
It's been very helpful for all of us, even though it takes time to be on a subcommittee. But the research that we have brought back, I think, is very beneficial. So I'd like to see that in the future as well.
I think one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that we have staff performing appropriate roles. And I think really what should happen, like in kind of best practice land, is typically staff does, like boards direct staff to do, and staff does. But I think one of the things we've been talking about in Netherlands, it doesn't have to be an ivory tower situation where it's exact like separation. And a lot of the ways they talk about it in policy land is like the staff is the pen or the pencil drawing the picture, the board is the hand. So the staff is responsible for drawing a legible or legal and ethical picture. But that's one of the things that we've also talked about, is we do have so much expertise here that we want to preserve that ability to do that. But we need to make sure that it happens within the guidelines of what should, and so that we don't end up with something that is off, in any way. And so I think that there is some definite room here to make sure that you guys can continue to have working groups like that, but we can continue to make sure that we're involved appropriately where we need to be.
And I think it was very beneficial tonight.
Pull that closer.
It
Ryan's
was
gonna hurt.
very beneficial tonight to have the workshop, because we did work almost as a subcommittee on that. So that was good.
Yeah, we'd love to have more sessions with you. I think it's helpful when people can have not just 3 minutes to try to say everything in their brain. And there you have the space to do that. And so we can definitely think about more. And the board of trustees, what they're doing right now is we're having more work sessions, and they're happening at, like you did tonight, 6 o'clock with the 7 o'clock meeting or whatever. And that way nobody has to come on an extra night or, extra stuff. But the other thing that will help us with is it helps us develop better aims because we have some direction before we have to write something that has policy implications. So we know for sure like where you're going, and that helps everyone. So I think that that would be wonderful if we could start, if we could do that at times.
Okay. Uh, Commissioner Pingsinger and Dugan, do you have anything to add?
No here, and thank you for the discussion. I concur.
Yeah, Timmy here. Yeah, all good on my end. Nothing to add.
All right, then. If that's the, again, I appreciate, and I think everyone on this board realizes that the staff do like 96% of the work that has to be done. You know, we might give input, but you guys are the ones, you know.
Indeed.
And so, you know, we appreciate all the hard work that's going on. You might need to mute yourself, Timmy. All right, if that's the case, then let's close down this discussion item and move on to staff reports.
I found these are really good staff reports. It's good to have the town's budget right in here. I was delighted to see the audit completed that early. Yeah, everybody, it's one thing to read the narrative that we're all running full tilt, and then you read what people are really doing, and it's remarkable.
Yeah. I've been really thinking about how staff communicates to the boards. And I think that one of the things that is a priority for me with our staff is we're working really hard on creating an executive leadership team, which is different than just a group of department heads that meet together. And one of the things that I know about our staff is our department heads take care of our people really well, and they really defend them and give them good working environments and really good support systems. But our town needs an executive leadership team at the staff level too. And the biggest reason for that is we need to be able to communicate the workloads that people have that are the things that government does well that other people can. And that's things like making sure toilets flush, and that at the end of the day, people get their building permits in a reasonable and timely fashion. And, you know, that we're covering these things and thinking about where we have gaps where the service could be more equitable or better or whatever that is. And our staff, I can't tell you how much our staff cares about this place and how committed they are. I have people who will work 120 hours in a pay period and not even think about it. And that's something that I would rather not have if I could avoid it. But sometimes, you know, you get people who are, that's their mission. I'm going to make this thing the best thing it can be. So that's something we're working on too, is really good work-life balance things. But what we're really trying to focus on is communicate our levels of service that we can give to the community. And you may see this really publicly right now with our streets supervisor. He's been communicating our work plans and how we're working in the community. And that'll continue through the winter with snow removal. We have a new website, and I'm going to give Britt a little bit more props because she has been like driving the bus on that. And our new website is beautiful and responsive and way better than what we have right now and very close to finished. So thank you to Britt for doing that. But it's going to give us the ability to talk about projects so much more effectively than we do now. And that's the goal. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you is we want to continue upgrading these staff reports and make sure that there's data points that the community can understand. So when we do have these policy questions, they come from a place where this is, you know, the service level is communicated first of what we're doing. And then that helps with these strategic conversations too about what other capacity is and how we might handle that. Netherland has got like the, you know, we're not the biggest town, but we got that elephant appetite. And I think that's a good thing for us. We can get a lot done. We got a lot of people here. We used to say, like get stuff done in Idaho Springs. It wasn't stuff we said, but that's kind of what happens here. That's just how it is. And so I love being a part of this team. I love having this team working with me, and I love working with you guys too. You guys make that happen for us too. So you're important in this whole process as well as we do that. But if there's things in those staff reports, we want to give you data points that you can use. And so that's what we're really trying to focus on.
Yeah, even the sheriff's report was quite complete. It's remarkable. Well done.
Well, let's ask Britt to highlight anything that she feels is good for us to know. I know somebody's gonna ask something about the charters. I saw that one that was in.
Oh, yeah. I was going to add on to John's. Sometimes at the end of the day, when I'm going through my report, it can be lackluster. So if there's ever stuff that you guys are wanting to specifically know in the building department or sustainability, because Cass runs under me, please don't hesitate to say, hey, could you start adding this to your staff report? I think that's helpful because sometimes you get that to the end of the day and it's hard to summarize what you've done.
Or remember everything.
Yes, yeah, something I did want to acknowledge in my world, and I kind of found this out. I don't have this specific number in front of me, but I know we did set a budget for our building permits this year, and I've already exceeded that, which is really exciting to me because more people are pulling permits because it's a really, I think, is really fast turnaround. And that's something that's exciting to me just because that overall can help with infrastructure, general fund, and I think that's really great. We've got a lot of row permits right now, so right away permits. People are building. We've got, new poles going up with Excel. And again, I'm the person that if something's not going wrong, feel free to contact me because we're also doing code enforcement. As you'll see, I think our social media has gotten more active. I'm also over that. And let me know if you ever have any feedback on that, if it's too much, too little. I'm trying to really dial that in so we get a lot more communication with the residents. So you'll see posted like Netheads and on our Facebook. Yeah, the EV charger, it's just a really brutal battle that I have continuing to go. I actually got them to agree to have a meeting with our contractor, myself, John, and both of the teams. We work with Switch and this company like EFAC or however you say their name. So we're all going to meet to figure out how we can actually get this up and running. Thankfully, I have a really good contractor that I've been working with who has continued to have my back, and John as well. So I'm really hoping that something comes from that. But yeah, in regards to the new website, as John was saying, myself and Cass have put a lot of time into it and we're really excited. There'll still be some tweaks here and there, but we're really excited. We should get most of our feedback in the next 2 weeks. And then from there, we will add a couple of things and hopefully be able to actually launch it, which is super exciting. But we still are making updates on the current website. So you'll see the news section, in the press. I'm still updating if there's fire bans or the Holiday Mountain Market applications are live for that. And so you'll still see things like that there. Otherwise, our utilities department is working really hard right now. A lot of them, Brian got all his level D certifications, which is really exciting. He went from parks and immediately just went after it in utilities, which is really cool to see. And those are some pretty hard tests. I've been there and done that. They're not fun. And Ryan also achieved another one. I believe he's on his level C for his distributions. And they've been doing inspections. So this Thursday, they're going to be doing a sewer pipe inspection and we are going to be cleaning the, oh, that's tomorrow. We are going to be cleaning the visitors center parking lot from 5 probably 4:30 a.m. till about 7 a.m. We've already talked to all the businesses, but you'll see that happening tomorrow. And so they're really working really hard on that. They actually had someone who was a previous inspector come out and teach them how to do it safely. And then Streets is working hard. Just grading roads. There's a giant list there of what they've tackled so far. And Josh and I have been working pretty close together, and he's also been working with Cass on some sustainability stuff with Streets. So very exciting there. Parks is working really hard. We're all kind of in our busy season. It's right before it gets cold. We're prepping, we're getting that last minute stuff. Enforcement. I mean, it's a brutal time of the year. It's our peak time, so we appreciate your patience, but we also appreciate your feedback. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to John or, myself or whoever. And other than that, that's pretty much it. Something I thought it was exciting is also in my world, because obviously I live in my world, is within the first 2 weeks of August, I had 17 permits pulled, which was crazy awesome. I mean, awesome and also exhausting, but really cool to see people are being compliant. They're coming in, they're asking questions. We have had some new lots sold and people are interested in building, so expecting more building permits to come. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know.
I consider that a testament to the improvements in the planning and permitting department, because I know that there was unpermitted work going on in town because people felt like they'd rather take the risk than go through the process. So that's a kudos to you. And I know there's been some staff consolidation on some roles and things like that. So the fact that you are doing this and juggling the Eldora acquisition and everything else that needs to get done.
And the fire training.
Well, and those are personal goals, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, we are staff is doing awesome. You have a really good staff. And yeah, like Jim said, we have lost some people, and to be honest with you, besides having extra things here and there, it's not always as noticeable. I mean, people have really stepped up. And it's really cool to see our teams getting very tight knit. And love to see that. And everyone's still going for certifications. And also on the like building permits, one of our goals, which is something that I'm working on right now, is we are going on the fast track route to make sure that we complete that by the end of the year. It might be sooner than that. I don't remember the deadline, but yeah, we are still making improvements and still making sure we're compliant.
How is Safe Build performing for,
Ooh,
they're your partner?
Safeville, we have a new building and official that John and I will probably meet next week. We were both provided surveys and we were both very honest. I don't know that Safeville really liked that. But I would say I am building a much better relationship with a lot of the people there. I think there are going to have to be some really hard conversations because there has been turnover in Safe Build as well. And so, you know, I've continued to give that grace to where they're learning as well. But I think there are a lot of improvements and negotiations that could happen as we're going on to budget year. And that's kind of where my goal is I will be looking around or, you know, negotiating higher expectations because there are fast track things and affordable housing things that we need to meet with them. And if I can't count on them, then I can't promise, you know, the state or whoever that can happen. So John, add whatever you.
So it sounds like it needs work.